The red silk dress clung to her skin like a promise she was about to break. Myra Vale stood outside Adrian's bedroom door, champagne bottle in hand, heart pounding with anticipation, until she heard his laughter cut through the wood like a blade. "Easiest con I've ever run," he said, voice dripping with mockery. "She thinks I paid for her dad's surgery. She'll give me everything tonight." The bottle slipped from her fingers, hitting carpet without sound. In that moment, innocence shattered, and something far more dangerous was born. If you're ready for a story of betrayal, power, and dangerous love, stay until the end. Hit that like button and comment your city below so I can see how far this story travels. Thus, the hallway stretched before Myra like the rest of her carefully planned life. Long, predictable, safe. She'd counted the steps from the elevator to Adrian's penthouse door exactly 47 times over the past 6 months. Tonight would be 48, and it would change everything. Her reflection caught in the polished marble walls, and she barely recognized herself. The red silk dress had cost 2 weeks' salary from the cafe where she worked double shifts. Worth it, she'd told herself while swiping her card. Tonight was about more than fabric and seduction. It was about gratitude, about finally giving something back to the man who had saved her family when the hospital bills had threatened to drown them all. Adrian Crane, 28, devastatingly handsome, from a family whose wealth made her own working-class background feel microscopic. He'd appeared in her life like something from a romance novel, charming, attentive, impossibly generous. When her father's heart had given out and the medical costs had spiraled into 6 figures, Adrian had simply written a check. No hesitation, no conditions. "Family takes care of family," he'd said, kissing her forehead with such tenderness she'd nearly wept. She'd been waiting ever since, waiting until she felt worthy, until she could offer him something equally precious. Her virginity felt like the only currency she had that matched his generosity. Old-fashioned, maybe, but real. The champagne bottle felt cool against her palm. Dom Perignon, because Adrian had mentioned once that it was his favorite. She'd practiced her smile in the mirror, rehearsed how she'd look when he opened the door. Confident, ready, in love. Her heels clicked against the hardwood as she approached his door. Music drifted from inside, something low and sensual. Perfect. Her hand rose to knock. Then she heard the voices. "Jesus, Adrian, you're really going through with it." A male voice, laughing. "Tonight's the night?" "Why not?" Adrian's voice, unmistakable. "I've played the devoted boyfriend long enough." She's practically vibrating with gratitude. Myra's hand froze midair. "Easiest con I've ever run," Adrian continued, and ice flooded her veins. "She actually thinks I paid for her dad's surgery. She'll give me everything tonight, and I won't have spent a dime of my own money." The other man laughed. "Your dad's money, though. Victor's going to love knowing his charitable donation got his son laid. What Victor doesn't know won't hurt him. As far as I'm concerned, I earned this. 6 months of pretending to care about her sad little life, her depressing family stories, her pathetic dreams of community college. Tonight I collect." "You're a bastard, Crane." "I'm efficient. There's a difference. Besides, she's hot enough to make the investment worthwhile. That innocent act she does? The wide eyes and blushing? She's probably been planning this for months, thinking she's seducing me. It's almost adorable." Something inside Myra cracked. Not broke, breaking implied weakness, fragility. This was different. This was the sound of something crystallizing, hardening, becoming sharp enough to cut. Her hand lowered. The champagne bottle felt different now, heavier. She looked down at the red dress, at the careful makeup, at the expensive lingerie beneath that had taken another week's pay. All of it a costume for a play where she was the only one who didn't know the script. The voices continued, but she wasn't listening anymore. Her mind was moving too fast, rewinding through 6 months of memories and re-seeing them with new eyes. The way Adrian had always deflected when she tried to discuss repayment plans. The condescending patience in his voice when she talked about her job, her father's recovery, her hopes for the future. The way his friends had looked at her at parties, not with respect, but with knowing amusement. She'd been a bet, a game, entertainment for a bored rich boy. But Adrian had said something crucial, something that cut through the humiliation and rage and pointed toward a different truth. Victor's money. Victor Serrano, Adrian's father. A name mentioned in passing, always with either reverence or fear, depending on who spoke it. She'd never met him. Adrian kept that part of his life carefully separated, claimed his father was too busy, too demanding, too difficult, too real, maybe, for the fantasy Adrian was constructing. Her phone was in her hand before she'd made a conscious decision. Her fingers knew what to do even if her brain was still catching up. Google. Victor Serrano. The search results painted a picture that made Adrian look like a child playing dress-up. CEO of Serrano Industries, real estate magnate, venture capitalist. The words were polite euphemisms for what the images suggested. A man who controlled empires, who made decisions that shifted markets, whose mere presence in a photograph made everyone else look like they were posing for his benefit. She found his office address in 3 clicks. Serrano Tower, downtown. 40 minutes if she caught a cab. The penthouse door opened behind her. Myra? Adrian's voice carried surprise. Performance quality surprise. What are you doing out here? I thought you were coming at 9. She turned slowly, looked at him, really looked at him, for the first time since the veil had been ripped away. He was handsome. She could acknowledge that objectively now. Square jaw, perfect hair, expensive casual clothes that probably cost more than her monthly rent. But it was all surface. Underneath was nothing but calculation and cruelty. I was early, she said, and was proud her voice didn't shake. But I forgot something. His eyes traveled down her dress, and she saw the hunger there, the anticipation. He thought he'd won. Forgot what? His smile was meant to be seductive. It looked predatory now. My self-respect. She turned away. Don't call me again. Myra, wait! But she was already moving, her heels clicking rapid fire against marble, the champagne bottle still clutched in her hand like a weapon she hadn't decided whether to use. Behind her, she heard Adrian call out again, heard confusion shift to irritation, but she didn't stop. The elevator couldn't come fast enough. The cab ride downtown cost $40 she couldn't afford. Myra didn't care. Money had stopped meaning what it used to mean approximately 27 minutes ago when her entire understanding of her life had been rewritten. Serrano Tower dominated the skyline like a declaration of power, all steel and glass and uncompromising verticality. The lobby gleamed with the kind of cleanliness that required full-time staff. A security desk stood between her and the elevators, manned by 2 guards who looked like they bench-pressed small cars for warm-up. I need to see Victor Serrano, Myra announced. The guards exchanged glances. One of them, older with a scar bisecting his left eyebrow, leaned forward slightly. Do you have an appointment? No. Then, I'm afraid, tell him it's about his son Adrian and the money he stole. The words came out harder than she intended. Good. She was done being soft. The guard's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his posture. Recognition, maybe, or concern. Your name? Myra Vale. He picked up a phone, turned away, spoke in tones too low to hear. Myra stood there in her red silk dress and heels, probably looking insane, definitely not caring. The adrenaline that had carried her here was starting to fade, replaced by something colder and more sustainable. Anger, pure clarifying anger. The guard hung up, looked at her with something that might have been respect or might have been pity. Top floor. Mr. Serrano will see you. The elevator rose so smoothly she barely felt the movement. Just watched the floor numbers climb, 20, 30, 40, each one taking her further from the life she'd known an hour ago. The doors opened directly into an office that was less a workspace and more a statement of dominance. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city like a kingdom awaiting orders. The furniture was minimal but clearly expensive, the kind of expensive that didn't need to announce itself. A desk that looked carved from a single piece of black marble dominated the space, and behind it stood Victor Serrano. The photographs hadn't prepared her. They'd captured his presence but not the weight of it. He was tall, she'd known that, but she hadn't expected the way he seemed to command the very air around him. Dark hair threaded with silver at the temples. A face that was handsome in a way that had nothing to do with youth and everything to do with power and intelligence. He wore a white shirt with the sleeves rolled to his elbows, no tie, as if formality was something other people needed. He was looking at her with eyes that missed nothing. Miss Vale. His voice was deeper than Adrian's, rougher. My security chief said you have information about my son. Myra walked forward, heels sinking slightly into carpet that probably cost more per square foot than her apartment. She stopped in front of his desk, chin raised. Your son is running a con, she said bluntly. He's been pretending to date me for 6 months, telling me he paid my father's medical bills out of generosity. Tonight I overheard him bragging to his friend that it was your money and that he's been stringing me along to collect on what he considers his investment. Victor's expression didn't change. He gestured to a chair across from his desk. Sit. I'd rather stand. That wasn't a request, Miss Vale. You came to my office making accusations about my son. The least you can do is sit down and explain them properly. She sat. Not because he'd ordered it, but because her legs were starting to shake and she refused to let him see. Victor moved around the desk, but instead of sitting behind it, he leaned against the front edge, arms crossed, looking down at her. Everything about his posture was designed to intimidate. She recognized that. What surprised her was that it worked. Adrian had seemed dangerous in a shallow, performative way. Victor was dangerous the way Winter was dangerous. Inevitable. Absolute. From the beginning, he said, don't leave anything out. So she told him. About meeting Adrian at the cafe where she worked. About the whirlwind romance. About her father's heart attack and the crushing medical debt. About Adrian's seemingly miraculous generosity. About 6 months of gratitude and growing love and careful planning for a future that had never existed. About tonight. The red dress. The champagne. The conversation she wasn't meant to hear. Victor listened without interrupting, his face impassive. When she finished, silence stretched between them like a test. I paid your father's medical bills, he finally said. $347,000. I remember the amount because Adrian requested it specifically, claimed it was for a charitable cause his social club was supporting. I signed off without investigating further. So he lied to you too? My son lies frequently. Usually I'm aware of it. Victor's jaw tightened. This time, apparently, I wasn't paying enough attention. I don't want money, Myra said quickly. I'm not here looking for compensation or... Then why are you here? The question landed like a physical thing. Why was she here? What had she thought would happen when she stormed into this man's office, full of righteous fury and shattered dreams? I don't know, she admitted. You paid for my father's treatment. You saved his life. I thought you should know your money went to save someone, even if your son is a lying piece of... Careful. Victor's voice dropped into a register that made her spine straighten. He's still my son. He's still a bastard. Something flickered in Victor's eyes. Amusement, maybe. Or recognition. That too. He moved away from the desk, walked to the windows overlooking the city. Your father. How is he? Alive. Thanks to you. He's back at work now, part-time. Physical therapy is helping. The doctors say he'll make a full recovery. Good. Victor continued staring out at the skyline. Adrian will be dealt with. You have my word that he'll face consequences for this deception. I don't want him punished on my behalf. I want... She stopped. What did she want? Revenge felt too simple, justice too abstract. Victor turned and she realized he'd been waiting for her to finish that sentence. What do you want, Myra? The way he said her name, without the miss, without the distance, made something shift in the air between them. She stood, unable to stay seated under the weight of his attention. I want to stop being the girl everyone underestimates, she said. I want to stop being grateful and small and so goddamn naive that I can't see a con when it's right in front of my face. And how exactly do you plan to accomplish that? She took a step toward him, then another, until she was close enough to see the fine lines at the corners of his eyes, the exact shade of gray in his hair, the way his gaze had shifted from analytical to something else entirely. I haven't figured that out yet, she said, but I know it starts with walking away from your son and everything he represents. Does it? Victor's voice had gone quiet, dangerous quiet. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you came here looking for something specific. You just haven't admitted it to yourself yet. What would that be? He closed the remaining distance between them, not touching her, but near enough that she could smell expensive cologne and something underneath it that was just him. Power and control and barely restrained intensity. Revenge, he said softly. The best kind. The kind that would destroy my son's ego more thoroughly than any punishment I could devise. Her heart was racing. I don't understand. Yes, you do. His eyes held hers. You wore that dress for Adrian. You brought champagne and expectations and 6 months of gratitude. He wanted to take your innocence as payment for money he never spent. What if someone else claimed it first? The words hung between them like a lit match near gasoline. You, Myra breathed. Me. No apology in his voice, no shame, just stated fact. You want to hurt him? Make him feel what you felt tonight? There's no better way than to give his father what he thought he'd earned. It was insane. Cruel. Perfectly calculated to wound Adrian where it would hurt most. His pride. That's a terrible reason to sleep with someone, Myra said. I agree, which is why I'm not suggesting you do it. Confusion must have shown on her face, because Victor's expression shifted into something that might have been a smile if it had contained any warmth. I'm telling you to leave, he clarified. Walk out that door, go home. Process what happened tonight like a rational person. Mourn the relationship you thought you had. Move on with your life. Then why mention the alternative? Because I wanted to see if you'd consider it, if there's steel underneath that heartbreak, or if you're exactly what Adrian believed you were. A nice girl, too soft for the world he and I inhabit. Anger flared hot in her chest. You're testing me. Everything is a test, Myra. The question is whether you pass or fail. She should leave. He was right about that. This was insane. Standing in a billionaire's office in a dress meant for seduction. Discussing sleeping with her ex-boyfriend's father as some kind of revenge fantasy. This wasn't her. She was a cafe waitress who took night classes and helped her parents with bills and believed in doing the right thing. Except the girl who believed in those things had been a fiction, a mark, a punchline to someone else's joke. Maybe it was time to be something else. If I stayed, she said slowly, it wouldn't be for revenge. Victor's eyebrows rose fractionally. No? No. It would be because I spent 6 months waiting for a man who didn't deserve patience. Building toward a moment that was based on lies. I'm tired of waiting. I'm tired of being careful. You barely know me. I barely knew Adrian. At least you've been honest about who you are. You think I'm honest? Now Victor did smile, and it was sharp enough to cut. I'm a businessman, Myra. I manipulate, strategize, and control outcomes to benefit myself. The only difference between Adrian and me is that I'm better at it. Then manipulate me. She stepped closer, close enough to feel the heat radiating from his body. Strategize, control the outcome. I don't care anymore. At least it would be real. For a long moment, Victor didn't move, just studied her with an intensity that made her feel simultaneously exposed and seen. Last chance, he finally said. Walk away. I'll have my driver take you home. You'll never hear from my son again, and this conversation never happened. Myra reached for the zipper at the back of her dress, found it, started to pull. Victor's hand caught her wrist, fast, controlled. His fingers were warm against her pulse point. If you do this, he said quietly, understand that I don't do anything halfway. I don't do casual. I don't do temporary. You pull that zipper, you're making a choice that has consequences beyond tonight. What consequences? That depends on whether you survived the morning with your sanity intact. It should have sounded like a threat. Instead, it sounded like a promise. Myra pulled the zipper. The dress pooled at her feet like blood. Victor's control cracked, not shattered, but cracked. She saw it in the way his breathing changed, the way his eyes darkened, the way his hand tightened fractionally on her wrist before releasing it. You're angry, he observed. Hurt. You're not thinking clearly. I'm thinking more clearly than I have in months. This isn't you. How would you know what's me? I don't even know anymore. He reached past her, and for a moment she thought he was going to touch her, actually touch her, skin on skin, permission granted by the red silk crumpled at their feet. Instead, he grabbed his phone from the desk. What are you doing? She asked. Calling my driver to take you home. Don't. Myra, don't, she repeated, and this time there was steel in her voice. The steel he'd been looking for. I didn't come here to be rescued or protected or sent away like a child. I came here because I'm done being the girl who waits, who hopes, who trusts. Victor set the phone down slowly. And what kind of girl do you want to be instead? The kind who takes what she wants. And what do you want? She closed the distance between them, placed her palm flat against his chest, felt his heart beating strong and steady underneath expensive cotton. To feel something real, just for tonight. Can you give me that? His hand covered hers, held it there against his heartbeat. You're asking the wrong question. What's the right one? Whether you can handle the answer. He moved then, finally, decisively, pulling her against him with a controlled strength that made her breath catch. His mouth found hers, and it was nothing like kissing Adrian. There was no performance in this, no careful seduction technique designed to manipulate. This was hunger barely leashed, control maintained through sheer force of will. She kissed him back with 6 months of frustration and fury, with gratitude twisted into something sharper, with the reckless abandon of someone who'd already lost everything that mattered and had nothing left to protect. Victor's hands framed her face, tilted her head back, took the kiss deeper. Last chance, he muttered against her mouth. Say no, and I'll stop. I'm not saying no. Then say yes. Explicitly. So there's no confusion about what you're choosing. She met his eyes, saw the intensity there, the control, the darkness that Adrian had tried to imitate but never actually possessed. This was a man who knew exactly what he was capable of and didn't apologize for it. Yes, Myra said clearly. I'm choosing this. I'm choosing you, for tonight. Something shifted in Victor's expression, satisfaction, maybe, or recognition. Wrong again. What? Not just for tonight. His thumb brushed across her lower lip, possessive and gentle at once. I told you I don't do temporary. You say yes to me. You're saying yes to more than one night. I don't understand. You will. He kissed her again, and this time there was no hesitation in it. No last chances or warnings or opportunities to reconsider. His hands moved from her face to her shoulders to the small of her back, pulling her flush against him. She gasped at the contact, at the feeling of his body against hers, at the realization that this was actually happening. The desk was solid behind her. Victor lifted her onto it without breaking the kiss, stepped between her legs, and she wrapped herself around him like she was drowning, and he was air. Tell me you're sure, he demanded, his voice rough. I'm sure. Tell me you understand this changes everything. I don't care. His hand slid up her thigh, and she arched into the touch. You will, he promised darkly, but by then it'll be too late. She should ask what he meant, should demand clarification, should probably run screaming from this office, and this man, and the way he was looking at her like she was something he'd decided to keep. Instead, she pulled him closer and let the world burn. What? Dawn came too quickly and too slowly at the same time. Myra woke in a bed that definitely wasn't hers, too large, too soft, with sheets that probably cost more than her car. For a moment, she didn't remember where she was or how she'd gotten here. Then she felt the arm around her waist, and everything came rushing back. Victor was already awake. She could tell by the way he was breathing, by the way his hand had begun tracing slow patterns on her hip, by the presence of his attention, even though she couldn't see his face. I should go, she whispered. Should you? People will wonder where I am. What people? Your parents live 40 minutes outside the city. You have no roommate. Your friends from the cafe think you spent the night with Adrian. His voice was calm, factual. No one is looking for you. The certainty in his tone should have been disturbing. Instead, it just felt accurate. How do you know I don't have a roommate? I know a lot of things about you, Myra. I've known since Adrian first requested the money for charity. I don't give away $300,000 without understanding where it's going. She turned in his arms, met his eyes. You investigated me. I investigated the situation. You were incidental. And yet here we are? Here we are, he agreed. Morning light cut across his face, highlighting the silver in his hair, the lines that spoke of years and power and decisions that probably kept him awake some nights. He He was older than Adrian, significantly older, old enough to be... She shut down that thought before it could complete itself. What happens now? She asked. Victor's hand moved from her hip to her face, cupping her jaw with a gentleness that contradicted everything she thought she knew about him. Now you make a choice. Walk away and pretend this never happened, or stay and accept the consequences. You keep talking about consequences. What consequences? Your job at the cafe, your night classes, your careful, predictable life. All of it ends the moment you walk out of this room with me. Fear spiked through her. Is that a threat? It's reality. He sat up, and she was struck again by the controlled strength in the way he moved. Like violence was always an option he'd simply chosen not to exercise. Adrian knows you came here. He called me 17 times last night. By now, he's told his friends. They'll tell their friends. Within 48 hours, everyone in his social circle will know that his girlfriend came to see his father the night they were supposed to sleep together for the first time. So I'll be labeled a slut. I can handle gossip. It won't be gossip. It will be targeted destruction. Victor's expression was matter of fact. Your manager at the cafe is in debt to one of Adrian's fraternity brothers. Your night school program receives funding from a foundation that my company controls. Your father's job is at a firm that does business with Crane Industries, Adrian's mother's family company. Horror crawled up her spine. You're saying they'll come after everything. I'm saying Adrian will. He's petty, vindictive, and has resources he's never had to think twice about using. You humiliated him. He'll return the favor. Then what am I supposed to do? Just accept being destroyed? No. Victor's smile was sharp. You accept my protection instead. What does that mean? He stood, walked to the window overlooking a view that made her cafe apartment look like a closet. When he turned back, he was every inch the ruthless businessman who commanded empires. Marry me. Myra's laugh came out strangled. That's insane. It's practical. You need protection from my son's vindictiveness. I need... He paused. Let's say I need something you can provide. What could I possibly provide you? Legitimacy. He said it like it was obvious. I've built an empire through force and strategy and carefully managed fear. But there are circles in this city that still see me as the poor kid from Brooklyn who clawed his way up through morally questionable means. A wife humanizes me, makes me accessible, opens doors that money alone can't budge. So I'd be a prop, a trophy. You'd be my wife. There's a difference. Name one. Victor crossed back to the bed, sat on the edge close enough that she could feel the heat from his body. A prop is ornamental, temporary, replaceable. A wife is an investment, a partnership, a weapon. How romantic. I'm not offering romance, Myra. I'm offering protection, power, and a life that doesn't involve wondering whether you can make rent. I'm offering you the chance to become something more than the grateful girl who almost gave everything to a man who saw her as entertainment. She should refuse. This was insane. You didn't marry someone you just met, no matter how good the sex had been or how dire the alternative looked. And if I say no, she asked, then you walk out that door and you deal with whatever Adrian throws at you on your own. I won't interfere, but I also won't protect you. So it's not really a choice. Everything is a choice. Some choices just have better outcomes than others. Myra pulled the sheet up, suddenly very aware that she was naked and he was dressed, and this entire conversation was happening in the aftermath of the most reckless thing she'd ever done. I don't love you, she said. I don't love you either. That's not what this is about. Then what is it about? Victor's hand found hers under the sheet, squeezed once. Survival, evolution, becoming dangerous enough that no one dares treat you like a mark ever again. She thought about the red dress crumpled somewhere on his office floor, about Adrian's laughter and casual cruelty, about 6 months of believing in something that had never existed. How long? She asked. How long what? The marriage. When do I get out? You don't. His voice was flat, final. I told you I don't do temporary. You say yes, you're mine. Permanently. That's not fair. Fair's a fairy tale. This is business. And if I hate it, if I hate you, then you'll learn to hide it very well. Or you'll learn to appreciate what you gain in exchange for what you lose. He stood, headed for the door. Think about it. You have until I get out of the shower. When I come back, I want an answer. He left her there, alone in his bed, with a choice that wasn't really a choice and a future that terrified her. The clock on the nightstand ticked away, seconds that felt like executions. Hi? Victor returned in 15 minutes wearing a fresh shirt and the same unreadable expression. Myra was dressed, or at least partially dressed. Her red dress from last night looked wrong in the morning light, too theatrical, too naive. Well? Victor asked. She took a breath, let it out, made the decision that would define everything that came after. Yes. One word. The weight of a world behind it. Victor nodded once, like he'd expected this answer, like he'd known from the moment she walked into his office what choice she'd make. Practical terms, he said, all business now. The wedding happens within 2 weeks. Public ceremony, private reception. You move into this penthouse immediately. Your belongings will be collected and brought here by the end of today. I don't even know where here is. Serrano Tower, top floor. 3,000 square feet. 2 bedrooms if you want space, 1 if you don't. Security handles access. No one gets up here without permission. 2 bedrooms, she said quickly. Fine. You'll have a clothing allowance, credit cards in your name, and access to everything except my office and personal files. In exchange, you'll attend events as needed, present as my wife publicly, and not embarrass me. What about my classes? My job? Classes can continue if you want them. The job ends today. You won't need it. What if I want to work? Then work. But not as a waitress in a cafe where Adrian's friends can harass you. If you want a career, we'll build you one, just not there. It was insane how quickly her life was being reorganized, how efficiently Victor was dismantling everything she'd known and replacing it with something she couldn't quite comprehend yet. What about my parents? She asked. They'll want to meet you. They'll have questions. We'll handle them together. This afternoon, if you're ready. I'm not ready for any of this. Then get ready fast. The car leaves in an hour. He moved past her, heading for what she assumed was a closet, returned with a garment bag. What's this? She asked. Something to wear that doesn't look like you're processing trauma. He set the bag on the bed. Get dressed. Eat something. Try not to panic. Is that an order? It's advice. Take it or leave it. He left again, and Myra unzipped the garment bag with shaking hands. Inside was a dress, cream-colored, elegant, designer label she recognized from magazines but had never dreamed of wearing. The size was perfect. Of course it was. Because Victor knew everything, had investigated everything, had probably made this decision before she'd even walked into his office. She'd thought she was choosing him. Maybe he'd been choosing her all along. The dress fit like it had been made for her body specifically. She found shoes, also perfect, and minimal jewelry that probably cost more than her car. When she looked in the mirror, she didn't recognize the woman staring back. That was fine. She didn't want to be the woman she'd been yesterday. When she emerged from the bedroom, Victor was on the phone. He saw her, and something flickered in his expression before the professional mask slid back into place. Confirmed, he said into the phone. 2 weeks, private venue, minimal guest list. Yes, I'm aware of the implications. Handle it. He hung up, looked at her. Better. Better than what? Better than the girl who walked into my office last night looking for revenge. Is that what I was looking for? No? He closed the distance between them, adjusted the necklace so it sat perfectly against her collarbone. You were looking for a way to stop feeling powerless. I just gave you one. By trapping me in a marriage I don't want. By giving you armor. His hand settled on her shoulders. In 2 weeks, you'll be Myra Serrano. No one touches what's mine, including my son. The possessiveness in his voice should have terrified her. Instead, it felt like the first stable ground she'd stood on since the red dress and champagne and shattered illusions. What do I call you? She asked. In public. When people ask. My husband. Simple. Direct. Final. And in private? Victor's smile was sharp. Anything you want. I'm not easily offended. The car was waiting downstairs. Black. Expensive. Armored, probably, knowing Victor. The driver opened the door without a word, and Myra slid inside like she'd done this 1,000 times. Fake it until you make it, right? Victor joined her, and the car pulled away from Serrano Tower with the smooth efficiency of money-solving problems before they became problems. "Where are we going?" Myra asked. "Your parents' house. To tell them you're getting married." "Oh, they're going to think I'm insane." "They're going to think you're pregnant. Let them. It's easier than the truth." She stared at him. "You want me to lie to my parents?" "I want you to frame the situation in a way that minimizes their concern. Would you prefer I tell them their daughter came to my office, slept with me out of spite, and is now marrying me to avoid my son's vindictive social destruction?" "That's exactly what happened." "Yes, but it's not what they need to hear." He was right. That didn't make it feel any less like manipulation. The drive took 40 minutes. Myra spent it watching the city give way to suburbs. Suburbs give way to the working-class neighborhood where she'd grown up. Her parents' house looked smaller every time she saw it. Or maybe she was just seeing it through different eyes now. Victor got out first, offered his hand like they were attending a gala instead of ambushing her parents. She took it, felt the calluses on his palm that suggested he hadn't always lived in penthouses with 3,000 square foot views. Her mother answered the door, froze at the sight of them. "Myra? What? Who is this?" "Mom, can we come in? There's something I need to tell you." The conversation went worse than expected, and better than it could have. Her father, still weak from the heart attack, but getting stronger every day, stared at Victor like he was an alien species. Her mother oscillated between tears and cautious optimism. Neither of them believed the timeline was reasonable. 2 weeks? Her father repeated for the third time. "You've known this man for 2 weeks, and you're getting married?" "Actually," Victor interjected smoothly, "we've known each other for 6 months. Myra didn't want to say anything while she was dating Adrian because the situation was complicated." The lie landed with perfect precision. Her parents exchanged glances. "You were seeing both of them?" her mother asked carefully. "No," Myra said quickly. "Adrian and I were never exclusive. Victor and I—" She looked at him, found his expression encouraging. "We connected. It took time to admit it to ourselves. More lies. Stacked on lies, building a foundation of fiction that her future would rest on." "And Adrian knows?" her father pressed. "Adrian knows," Victor confirmed. "He's adjusting to the news." That was one way to put it. Her mother reached across the table, took Myra's hand. "Are you happy, sweetheart?" The question landed like a physical blow. Was she happy? She was terrified, angry, committed to the path she'd chosen in the aftermath of trauma and spite. Happy seemed like the wrong word entirely. "I'm sure," she said instead. "That's what matters, right?" Her mother's eyes filled with tears again, but she nodded. "If you're sure, then we support you, both of you." Her father was harder to convince, but eventually he shook Victor's hand, agreed to walk her down the aisle, accepted the explanation that felt true enough even though it was wrapped in careful fiction. When they finally left, Myra felt hollowed out. "You did well," Victor said as the car pulled away. "I lied to them. You protected them. There's a difference." "Is there?" He looked at her then, really looked, with an intensity that made her breath catch. "In 2 weeks, you'll understand what protection actually costs, what it requires. For now, just trust that I know what I'm doing." "I don't trust you." "Good. Trust is earned. Right now, all you need is belief that I'm better than the alternative." The car took them back to Serrano Tower, back to the penthouse that was apparently her home now. Her belongings had already arrived, boxes stacked neatly in what would be her bedroom. Her entire life reduced to cardboard and packing tape. "Take the day," Victor said. "Settle in. Tomorrow we start preparing you for what comes next." "What comes next?" "The wedding, the announcement, the part where you become someone no one dares dismiss." He left her there, surrounded by boxes and the weight of decisions that couldn't be undone. Myra stood in the center of her new bedroom, twice the size of her old apartment, furnished with more care than she'd expected, and tried to remember who she'd been 24 hours ago. The girl in the red dress felt like a ghost already. Good. Ghosts couldn't be hurt. And whatever Myra Vale was becoming, hurt wasn't part of the plan anymore. The boxes remained unpacked for 3 days. Myra couldn't bring herself to open them. to make this real by scattering her old life across the pristine surfaces of Victor's penthouse. Instead, she moved through the space like a guest in an expensive hotel, touching nothing, claiming nothing, existing in the strange limbo between who she'd been and who she was supposed to become. Victor was gone most of those first days. Meetings, acquisitions, the endless machinery of empire maintenance. He left before dawn and returned after midnight, their only interactions brief and transactional. He'd check that she'd eaten. She'd confirm she was fine. They'd retreat to separate bedrooms like strangers sharing an elevator. On the fourth morning, everything changed. Myra woke to find a woman standing at the foot of her bed. Tall, elegant, with silver hair cut sharp as a blade and eyes that missed nothing. She held a tablet and wore an expression that suggested she'd already cataloged every flaw Myra possessed. Jesus! Myra scrambled upright, pulling the sheets to her chest. Who are you? Elena Volkov. Mr. Serrano hired me to prepare you. The woman's accent was faint, Eastern European, maybe Russian. Her voice carried the authority of someone accustomed to obedience. We have 12 days until the wedding. That's not enough time, but it will have to be. Prepare me for what? Everything. Elena tapped her tablet. Victor Serrano's wife doesn't stumble through social situations or commit etiquette violations that reflect poorly on his empire. You will learn proper posture, conversation techniques, wardrobe selection, wine pairings, business dinner protocols, and how to handle hostile questioning from people who want to see you fail. Myra's hands tightened on the sheets. I didn't agree to become some kind of Stepford wife. No, you agreed to marry a man whose business associates include heads of state, cartel leaders, and CEOs who control markets. They will test you, probe for weakness, use any mistake as leverage against Victor. Elena's expression didn't soften. My job is to make sure you don't give them ammunition. And if I refuse, then you'll embarrass yourself and Victor at your own wedding, which takes place in 12 days, whether you're ready or not. Elena set the tablet on the dresser. I'm not here to be your friend, Miss Vale. I'm here to ensure you survive what's coming. Whether you cooperate determines how difficult I make the process. The woman turned and walked out, leaving the door open. An invitation or a command, Myra couldn't tell which. She found Elena in the dining room, where breakfast had been laid out with the precision of a military operation. Coffee, fruit, pastries that probably cost more per ounce than Myra used to make in an hour. Sit, Elena said, back straight, shoulders down. When you reach for the coffee, use your right hand and support the saucer with your left. Never lean over your plate. This is insane. This is necessary. Elena poured coffee with movements so fluid they looked choreographed. Victor Serrano married beneath his station. That's already a mark against you. Every person at that wedding will be looking for proof that you're a gold digger, a social climber, or simply too unsophisticated to belong in his world. The words stung because they were probably true. So I'm supposed to pretend to be someone I'm not? You're supposed to become someone you weren't. There's a difference. Elena sat across from her, posture perfect. You have intelligence. Victor wouldn't have chosen you otherwise. My job is to refine it, polish the rough edges, teach you to weaponize grace. Something in that phrase caught Myra's attention. Weaponize? For the first time, Elena's expression shifted into something that might have been approval. You think social situations are about being liked? They're about control, dominance masked as charm. The woman who commands a room without raising her voice has more power than the one who shouts. I'm going to teach you to be that woman. Myra picked up the coffee cup, right hand, left supporting the saucer. The porcelain was so thin she could see light through it. How long have you worked for Victor? She asked. 6 years. Before that, I trained diplomats' wives in Moscow. Before that, Elena smiled thinly. Let's say I understand exactly what it means to survive in a world designed to destroy you. Is that what this is? Survival? Everything is survival, Miss Vale. Some of us just do it in better shoes. The training began immediately. Elena moved through topics with ruthless efficiency. How to shake hands firmly without trying to compete. How to make small talk that gathered information without seeming invasive. How to exit conversations gracefully. How to remember names and faces and the complex web of alliances that govern Victor's world. By noon, Myra's head was spinning. Enough, Elena declared. This afternoon, wardrobe. You can't learn poise while wearing clearance rack cotton. The walk-in closet attached to Myra's bedroom had been empty when she arrived. Now it resembled a high-end boutique. Dresses, suits, casual wear, accessories arranged by color and occasion. Everything in her size. When did this happen? Myra breathed. While you were avoiding unpacking your boxes. Elena pulled out a navy sheath dress. Victor's assistant handled it. Try this. The dress fit perfectly. Of course it did. Myra studied herself in the full-length mirror and barely recognized the reflection. The cut made her look taller, more assured. The color brought out her eyes. Better, Elena said. But you're standing like you're apologizing for taking up space. Chin up, shoulders back, own the room even when you're alone in it. Myra adjusted her posture. Watched the woman in the mirror shift from uncertain to something sharper. There, Elena murmured. That's who you're becoming. The door opened. Victor stepped in, still wearing his suit from whatever meeting had consumed his day. He stopped when he saw Myra, and something flickered across his face too quickly to name. Elena, he said, without looking away from Myra. Progress? She's teachable. That's more than I expected. Good. Victor's gaze traveled from Myra's face to her posture to the dress that transformed her silhouette. We have dinner tonight. Il Corso. 8 o'clock. She'll need to be ready. We just started? Elena began. Then work faster. This dinner matters. He left as abruptly as he'd entered. Elena sighed. Il Corso is a test, she said flatly. Victor's business associates frequent it. Someone will recognize you. Someone will ask questions. Your answers will be dissected and reported back to everyone who matters. Panic fluttered in Myra's chest. I'm not ready. No one's ever ready. That's not the point. Elena pulled out another dress. Black, elegant, conservative enough to seem modest, but cut to command attention. The point is to not fall apart when you're thrown into deep water. Now, let's talk about how to deflect inappropriate questions without seeming defensive. The next 6 hours blurred together. Elena drilled her on responses, on body language, on the subtle art of controlling a conversation without appearing to dominate it. By the time Victor's assistant arrived with a jewelry case, Myra's brain felt like it had been through a marathon. Simple, Elena said, selecting a strand of pearls. Nothing flashy. You want to look like you belong, not like you're trying to prove it. The pearls felt cool against Myra's skin, heavy with the weight of expectations and borrowed elegance. Victor was waiting when she emerged. He'd changed into a different suit, charcoal, perfectly tailored, the kind of understated that screamed money to anyone who knew how to look. His eyes tracked her approach with an intensity that made her suddenly aware of every step. You look nervous, he observed. I am nervous. Don't be. You're walking into that restaurant as my fiancé. No one will dare disrespect you directly. Directly? The indirect attacks are what you need to watch for. Questions about how we met. Comments about the timeline. Compliments designed to make you feel like you don't deserve them. He offered his arm. Stay close. Follow my lead. And remember, you're not there to be liked. You're there to be remembered. The restaurant was exactly the kind of place Myra had never been able to afford. Dim lighting, hushed conversations, staff who moved like they'd been trained in silent efficiency. The maitre d' recognized Victor immediately, led them to a table positioned to see and be seen. Mr. Serrano, the man said warmly, your usual table. And this must be the young lady we've been hearing about. Word traveled fast in Victor's world. My fiancée, Myra Vale, Victor said smoothly. We'll have the tasting menu. Pair it with whatever you recommend. They settled into chairs that probably cost more than Myra's old car. She tried to remember everything Elena had taught her. Posture, napkin placement, which fork for what course. Her hands wanted to shake. She forced them still. Relax, Victor said quietly. You're doing fine. How can you tell? We've been here 30 seconds. You haven't bolted. That's better than some. His mouth quirked. The first time I ate somewhere like this, I was 17. Felt like everyone could smell that I didn't belong. Took years to realize that confidence is just expensive clothes and refusal to apologize for existing. It was the most personal thing he'd said to her since the wedding proposal. Myra studied him across the table, trying to reconcile the ruthless businessman with the kid who'd felt out of place in fancy restaurants. "What changed?" she asked. "I did. Decided I'd rather make them uncomfortable than spend my life feeling inferior." He leaned back as the sommelier approached with wine. "You'll get there. Just takes practice." The wine was poured, tasted, approved. Myra took a sip and tried not to wince at the dryness. Elena had covered wine etiquette, but theory and practice were different animals. "Not a fan?" Victor asked. "It tastes like expensive vinegar." His laugh was brief but genuine. "Stick to water. No one cares what you drink as long as you don't get drunk and say something stupid." The first course arrived, something delicate and artistic that Myra couldn't identify. She watched how Victor approached it, mirrored his movements, tried to look like she did this every week. "Victor Serrano." The voice came from behind them, male, smooth, carrying the kind of confidence that came from generations of privilege. "I heard rumors you were settling down. Didn't believe them until now." A man appeared at their table, 50s, expensive suit, face that suggested he was used to getting his way. His eyes landed on Myra with the assessing quality of someone pricing livestock. "Richard," Victor said neutrally. "Myra, this is Richard Pemberton. His family owns half the commercial real estate in the financial district. And yet your company keeps outbidding us." Richard's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Pleasure to meet you, miss." "Vale, eh?" Myra supplied. "Myra Vale." "Soon to be Myra Serrano, I understand. Quite the upgrade." The comment landed like a slap disguised as a compliment. Myra felt heat rise in her cheeks, fought to keep her expression neutral. "Quite the partnership," Victor corrected, ice entering his voice. "Was there something you needed, Richard, or are you just working the room?" "Just offering congratulations. Though I have to admit, I'm curious about the timeline. You've always been so careful about your personal life. This seems rather impulsive." There it was. The probe Elena had warned her about. The question designed to make her defensive, to crack the facade, to give them something to gossip about. Myra met Richard's eyes and remembered Elena's words. Weaponized grace. "When you know, she said calmly. "I'm sure someone in your family's long history has experienced love at first sight." The mention of his family, the implication that their old money came from someone else's impulsive decision generations ago, was a subtle knife. Richard's smile tightened. "Indeed. Well, enjoy your dinner." He nodded to Victor. "We should have lunch soon, discuss the Harbor Point development." "Have your assistant call mine," Victor said dismissively. Richard left. Myra realized her hands were clenched under the table. "Breathe," Victor said quietly. "I want to punch him." So do most people. That's why he talks the way he does. He enjoys making people uncomfortable. Victor's expression was approving. "You handled it well. The family comment was a nice touch." "Elena taught me to turn compliments into corrections." "Elena's worth every penny I pay her." The rest of the dinner passed with similar encounters. Friends of Victor's, business associates, people who wanted to see the woman crazy enough to marry him. Each conversation felt like a test. Each question probed for weakness. Myra deflected, redirected, smiled until her face hurt, and remembered Elena's lessons about control. By the time they left, she was exhausted. The car ride back was silent. Myra stared out the window at the city lights, processing everything that had happened. She'd survived, barely, but survived. "You did well tonight," Victor said. "I felt like I was drowning." "Everyone feels that way at first. It gets easier." "When?" "When you stop caring what they think and start caring about what you project." He shifted to face her. "They're going to talk regardless. Might as well give them something worth discussing." Back at the penthouse, Myra kicked off the heels that had tortured her feet for 4 hours and collapsed onto the sofa. Victor poured himself whiskey from the bar, offered her one. She shook her head. "I need to ask you something," she said. "Go ahead." "Why are you really doing this? The marriage. It can't just be about legitimacy. You could hire an actress, stage a relationship, accomplish the same thing without actually committing." Victor considered her over the rim of his glass. "You're right, I could." "So why didn't you?" "Because actresses leave when the contract ends. Marriages, even ones built on practicality, have permanence. Stakes. He set down the glass. You walked into my office looking for revenge on my son. I saw someone angry enough to be dangerous and smart enough to be useful. That combination is rare. So I'm useful. You're potentially useful. Right now you're raw material, but with the right training, the right positioning. He moved closer, sat on the arm of the sofa. You could be a weapon I point at my enemies and watch them bleed. The words should have horrified her. Instead, they sent a thrill through her system that felt uncomfortably like excitement. What enemies? She asked. Everyone who thinks they can take what's mine. Everyone who sees kindness as weakness. Everyone who needs reminding that I didn't build this empire by being merciful. His hand touched her face, tilted her chin up. You survived tonight. That's step one. Next comes thriving, then dominating. I don't know how to dominate anything. You will. I'm going to teach you. His thumb brushed across her lower lip, and heat flooded her system. Starting tomorrow. For tonight, get some sleep. You'll need it. He stood, headed for his bedroom, paused at the doorway. Myra? Yeah? The way you handled Richard tonight, the comment about his family, that instinct, to find the weakness and strike without seeming cruel, that's what I'm going to cultivate in you. Remember that feeling. We'll need it. He disappeared into his room, leaving Myra alone with her thoughts, and the strange realization that she'd enjoyed cutting Richard Pemberton down to size, that some dark part of her had liked watching his smile falter. Maybe Victor was right. Maybe she could be dangerous. The thought should have scared her. It didn't. The next morning, Elena arrived with reinforcements, a man named James who handled physical conditioning, and a woman named Doctor, Sarah Chen, who was apparently there to teach Myra strategic thinking and game theory. You're building me an army, Myra said to Victor over breakfast. I'm building you a foundation. The wedding is in 11 days. After that, the real education begins. James put her through exercises that left her shaking, not traditional gym routines, but movements designed to build presence and confidence. You need to look like you could handle yourself in a physical confrontation, he explained. Not because you'll fight, but because the threat needs to be visible. Dr. Chen was worse. She presented Myra with scenarios, business negotiations, social confrontations, hostile questions, and dissected every response for weakness. You're too apologetic, Chen said, after Myra fumbled through a mock conversation. Someone accuses you of being a gold digger, and you defend yourself. Wrong approach. What's the right approach? Turn it back on them. I'm surprised someone of your intelligence would repeat gossip without evidence. Now they're the one who looks foolish, not you. That seems cruel. This world is cruel. You can be kind and destroyed or strategic and safe. Choose. The days blurred together. Morning training with James, afternoon sessions with Elena on etiquette and social navigation, evenings with Dr. Chen learning to think 3 moves ahead. Victor appeared periodically, observing, making notes, occasionally stepping in to demonstrate a technique or reinforce a lesson. When someone challenges you, he said during one session, your first instinct is to prove them wrong. That's defensive. Winners don't defend, they redirect. Make them question why they challenged you in the first place. He staged a scenario. Played the part of a business associate questioning Myra's qualifications. I'm surprised Victor would bring someone so inexperienced into sensitive negotiations, he said, voice dripping with condescension. Myra's old response would have been to list her credentials, to prove her worth. Instead, she smiled. I'm surprised you'd assume inexperience equals incompetence. That seems like a costly mistake in your line of work. Victor's expression shifted into satisfaction. Better. You questioned his judgment instead of defending yours. Now he's off balance. Is everything a game to you? She asked. Everything is a game. Most people just don't realize they're playing. He stepped closer, his presence overwhelming in the confined space. You're learning fast. Faster than I expected. Maybe you underestimated me. Maybe I did. His hand found the small of her back, possessive and proprietary. We'll find out soon enough. The wedding dress arrived on day 8. Elena presented it with the solemnity of a sacred ritual. Myra stared at the creation of silk and lace and tried to reconcile it with the reality of what was happening. This costs more than my parents' house, she whispered. Then don't spill anything on it. Elena began the process of fitting, pinning, adjusting. The dress makes a statement. You're not some desperate girl marrying for money. You're a woman who belongs beside Victor Serrano. Myra caught her reflection in the mirror. The dress transformed her into something otherworldly, elegant, untouchable. I don't recognize myself anymore, she admitted. Good. The girl from the cafe wouldn't survive what's coming. This woman might. That night, Victor knocked on her bedroom door, a courtesy he usually skipped. She opened it to find him holding a velvet box. What's this? She asked. Tradition. He opened the box to reveal a ring that made her breath catch. Diamond, massive, surrounded by smaller stones that probably had their own insurance policies. You'll wear this starting tomorrow. Let people see it. Let them understand this is real. He took her hand, slid the ring onto her finger. The weight of it felt like a shackle. It's beautiful, she said, because it was. It's a message. You're mine now. Everyone needs to know that. The possessiveness in his voice was becoming familiar. Myra studied the ring, watched light fracture across its surfaces. Victor? Yes? What happens after the wedding, when all the training stops and it's just us? He was quiet for a long moment. Then we find out if this arrangement can become something more than survival, or if we're just two people using each other who happen to share a bed. Which do you want it to be? His hand cupped her face, thumb tracing her cheekbone. I want you to be dangerous enough that I don't have to worry about you becoming collateral damage in my world. Everything else is negotiable. He kissed her then, slow, deliberate, nothing like the frantic urgency of their first night. This was claiming, staking territory, reminding her that despite the separate bedrooms and professional distance, he still considered her his. When he pulled back, Myra was breathless. 3 more days, he said quietly. Then everything changes. It already changed. No, you changed. The world hasn't caught up yet. He stepped back, and the loss of contact felt visceral. Get some sleep. Tomorrow we go public with the engagement announcement. The announcement hit social media like a detonation. Victor's PR team had crafted it perfectly. A photo of them at Il Corso, Myra's ring visible, both of them looking at each other with expressions that could pass for love, if you didn't know better. The caption was simple. She said yes. Within hours, the internet exploded. News outlets picked up the story. Society blogs dissected every detail. And Adrian, predictably, lost his mind. The first message came at noon. Are you fucking serious? Myra deleted it without responding. The second, you're doing this to hurt me. The third, my father? Really? What kind of sick revenge fantasy is this? Elena found her staring at her phone, watching the messages accumulate. Block him, Elena said flatly. I want him to see what he lost. He didn't lose you. He never had you. You were always too good for him. You just needed to believe it. Elena took the phone, blocked Adrian's number with efficient finality. There. Now he's irrelevant. He's going to make trouble. Let him. Victor's lawyers are better than whatever Adrian can afford. But the messages didn't stop. They just came from different numbers. Friends of Adrian's, people Myra barely knew, all of them with opinions about her engagement. Gold digger, desperate, using an old man for his money, sleeping your way up. Dr. Chen found her reading the comments, face burning with humiliation. Why do you care what they think? Chen asked. Because they're right. I am using him. This whole thing is transactional. Every marriage is transactional. Some people trade looks for security, others trade companionship for social status. You're trading your time and public image for protection and opportunity. That's not shameful. It's honest. It doesn't feel honest. Then make it honest. Stop thinking of this as something being done to you and start thinking about what you're building. Chen sat across from her, expression serious. You have access to resources most people can't imagine. Knowledge, training, Victor's network. Use them. Become someone these people can't dismiss. How? By being better than they are, smarter, more strategic, more dangerous. Chen leaned forward. They're attacking you because you threaten them. A waitress marrying into power disrupts their carefully maintained hierarchy. Prove them right to be threatened. The words settled into Myra like seeds in fertile ground. That evening, she asked Victor for access to his business files. He looked up from his laptop, surprise flickering across his features. Why? Because I want to understand what you do, really understand it, not just the surface level. Most of what I do is morally gray at best. Then teach me to navigate the gray. He studied her for a long moment, then closed his laptop and stood. Come with me. His office at the penthouse was smaller than the one at Serrano Tower, but no less imposing. Screens displayed market data, property acquisitions, financial projections. He pulled up a chair beside his own. This is the Harbor Point development Richard mentioned, Victor began, pointing to schematics on the screen. $50 million project, commercial and residential mixed use. We're competing with 3 other firms for the contract. How do you win? Usually, underbid the competition and make up the loss on back-end deals. But this one's political. The city council wants community investment, not just profit. So give them community investment. It's not that simple. The council members all have interests, some financial, some social, some personal. Winning means understanding what each of them wants and making them believe we're the only ones who can deliver it. He walked her through the landscape, which council members could be bought, which operated on ideology, which responded to public pressure. It was like watching a chess master explain a complex game. How do you keep track of all this? Myra asked. Practice. And accepting that everyone has a price. It's just a matter of finding what currency they value. That's cynical. That's reality. He leaned back. You wanted to understand my world. This is it. Power traded for influence. Money moved through careful channels. Relationships built and burned as needed. And people? Are they just pieces on the board? Some are. Some become more. His eyes held hers. The question is which category you want to occupy. Before she could answer, his phone rang. He glanced at the screen and his expression hardened. Excuse me, he said, stepping away. His voice was too low to hear clearly, but Myra caught fragments. Shipment. Delayed. Port authority. The language of business that probably meant something less legal underneath. When he returned, his expression was unreadable. Problem? She asked. Nothing that concerns you. We're getting married in 3 days? Your problems become my problems. Not these ones. He closed the laptop with finality. Some parts of my work stay separate. For your protection. I don't need protection from information. Yes, you do. Trust me on this. The conversation ended there, but Myra felt the wall go up between them. Sections of his life marked off limits, areas where she wasn't allowed to tread. It should have been a relief. Instead, it felt like a reminder that despite the ring and the training and the upcoming ceremony, she was still an outsider. 2 days before the wedding, Adrian showed up at Serrano Tower. Security called Victor immediately. Myra heard him on the phone, voice ice cold. Tell him I'm not interested in whatever he's selling. If he doesn't leave voluntarily, have him removed. I'll talk to him, Myra said. Absolutely not. He's not going to stop unless someone addresses this directly. Let me handle it. Victor's jaw tightened. You have 5 minutes. Security stays close. Adrian was waiting in the lobby, looking worse than she'd ever seen him. Unshaven, rumpled clothes, eyes bloodshot from what was probably alcohol or lack of sleep, or both. Myra, he said when he saw her, relief and desperation in his voice. Finally, we need to talk. We don't need to do anything. You need to leave. This is insane. You're marrying my father to punish me. I'm marrying your father because, unlike you, he's honest about what he wants. He doesn't want you. He wants to humiliate me. Don't you see that? This whole thing is about control. Myra stepped closer, lowered her voice so the security guards wouldn't hear. You're right. It is about control. But not his. Mine. I'm taking control of my life instead of waiting for someone to value me. That's what terrifies you. Not that I'm marrying Victor, but that I chose someone who sees me as more than a convenient target for a con. I cared about you, Adrian said, and almost sounded sincere. No, you cared about winning a bet. There's a difference. She turned to leave, then paused. By the way, your friend's comments on social media? The gold digger accusations? Tell them to be more creative. Those insults are boring. Myra, We're done, Adrian. We were always done. I just didn't know it until I overheard you laughing about it. She walked away, heels clicking against marble, spine straight. Didn't look back even when she heard him call her name one more time. In the elevator, her hands started shaking, not from fear, from the rush of power that came with having the last word, with walking away on her terms. Victor was waiting in the penthouse when she returned. "How did it go?" he asked. "I told him the truth, that I chose you." "Did you?" His expression was unreadable. "Or did you choose what I can give you?" "Does it matter?" "Not to me. I'm just curious if you're lying to yourself or if you've accepted the reality of this arrangement." Myra crossed to where he stood, looked him in the eyes. "I chose survival. I chose power. I chose becoming someone who can't be used anymore. If that happens to come packaged with you, then so be it." Something like respect flickered in his gaze. "Good answer." "Was it a test?" "Everything's a test. You're getting better at them." The wedding was scheduled for 2 o'clock on Saturday. Small ceremony, exclusive guest list, every detail managed with the precision of a military operation. Myra spent the morning being transformed by a team of stylists who treated her like a sculpture they were perfecting. Elena appeared as they finished. "How do you feel?" "Like I'm about to jump off a cliff." "You are. The question is whether you'll fly or fall." Elena adjusted the veil with careful hands. "Either way, there's no going back after today." The venue was a private estate outside the city. Rolling grounds, century-old trees, the kind of place that had witnessed generations of power consolidated through marriage. Myra arrived in a car with windows tinted so dark she couldn't see out, couldn't see the inevitable crowd of photographers and curious onlookers. Her father was waiting inside. He looked uncomfortable in his rented tuxedo, but smiled when he saw her. "You look beautiful, sweetheart," he said quietly. "I look expensive. There's a difference." "Are you happy?" The question landed heavy. Myra thought about lying, about giving him the answer he wanted. Instead, she gave him truth. "I'm sure, Dad. That's the best I can offer right now." He nodded, took her arm. "Then let's get you married." The ceremony was brief. Victor stood at the altar in a black suit that probably cost more than her father's car, expression neutral as Myra walked toward him. The guests, 50 people who represented billions in collective wealth, watched with varying degrees of curiosity and judgment. Myra didn't look at them, kept her eyes on Victor, on the man who'd offered her armor in exchange for partnership. The officiant spoke words about love and commitment and forever. Myra and Victor repeated vows they'd written together, practical, honest, devoid of romantic illusions. When Victor slid the wedding band onto her finger, his eyes held a question. She answered it by kissing him first. The reception blurred. Champagne, carefully orchestrated conversations, photos that would appear in tomorrow's society pages. Myra smiled until her face ached, accepted congratulations from people who clearly thought she'd conned her way into wealth, and pretended not to notice the whispers. Late in the evening, Victor found her on the terrace overlooking the grounds. "Surviving?" he asked. "Thriving," she corrected. "Isn't that what you wanted?" "I wanted to see if you could handle pressure. You're exceeding expectations." "Good, because I'm just getting started." He moved closer, and in the dim light, he looked almost human, almost vulnerable. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now we go home. Wake up tomorrow as husband and wife. Figure out if this arrangement can be more than a business transaction. And if it can't, then we have a very profitable partnership in separate bedrooms." He took her hand, the one wearing his rings. "But I don't think that's how this ends." "How does it end?" Victor's smile was dangerous. "With you running half my empire and terrifying everyone who underestimated you. That's the plan, anyway." Myra leaned into him, felt his arm wrap around her waist with practiced possession. "Then let's get started," she said. They left the reception early, disappeared into the night while guests were still drinking and speculating. The car took them back to Serrano Tower, back to the penthouse that was officially theirs now. Victor poured whiskey, handed her a glass. "To survival," he said. "To transformation," she countered. They drank, and somewhere in the silence that followed, Myra realized she was no longer afraid. She was ready. The whiskey burned going down, but Myra welcomed it. The heat matched the adrenaline still coursing through her veins from the ceremony, from the careful performance of being Myra Serrano for the first time in public. She set the glass down and found Victor watching her with that analytical intensity she was learning to recognize as interest rather than judgment. "You should change," he said. "That dress wasn't designed for comfort. Neither was this marriage, but here we are." His mouth quirked. "Fair point. Still, unless you plan to sleep in $10,000 worth of silk and lace, I'd suggest something else." She retreated to her bedroom, still hers, still separate, despite the rings on her finger and the legal documents that now bound them. The dress came off with Elena's earlier instructions echoing in her mind about proper garment care, but Myra just draped it over the chair and pulled on yoga pants and a t-shirt that felt obscenely casual in comparison. When she returned to the living room, Victor had loosened his tie and rolled up his sleeves. He dimmed the lights and opened the floor-to-ceiling windows, letting in the cool night air and the distant sound of the city 40 floors below. "Better?" he asked. "More honest, at least." He gestured to the sofa, and she sat. He remained standing, glass in hand, silhouetted against the city lights like some modern king surveying his kingdom. "We should discuss expectations," Victor said, "now that this is official." "I thought we already did that. We discussed the public aspects. What happens in private is different." He turned to face her. "I have enemies, Myra. Real ones. People who would use you to get to me if given the opportunity. That means security protocols you'll need to follow." "Such as?" "You don't go anywhere without informing my head of security. You don't accept drinks from people you don't know. You don't discuss my business with anyone outside approved channels. And if something feels wrong, you trust that instinct and get to safety immediately." The casual way he outlined dangers that most people never had to consider sent ice through her system. "You're serious?" "Completely. I've built this empire by being ruthless when necessary. That makes me valuable to some and threatening to others. You're now part of that equation." "What kind of enemies are we talking about?" Victor took a long drink before answering. "Business rivals who see violence as negotiation. Political figures who don't appreciate my influence in their territories. Organizations that operate outside the law and resent my expansion into their markets." He paused. "And occasionally people I've destroyed who want revenge." "Jesus, Victor, what kind of world did I just marry into?" "The real one. Most people just don't see it clearly." He sat beside her, close enough that she could smell his cologne mixed with whiskey. "You wanted power. This is what power looks like. It's not clean or safe or morally simple. It's knowing that every decision has consequences and making them anyway." Myra thought about Adrian, about the cafe, about the girl who'd believed in romance and fairness and the idea that good things happen to good people. That girl felt like she'd existed a lifetime ago. "Tell me about them," she said. "Your enemies. If I'm supposed to watch for threats, I should know what I'm watching for." Victor studied her for a long moment. Then he pulled out his phone and brought up a series of photos. "Marcus Chen runs shipping operations through the harbor. We've been undercutting each other for 3 years. Last month, one of my warehouses burned down. No proof it was him, but I know." The man in the photo looked ordinary. Middle-aged, glasses, the kind of person you'd pass on the street without a second thought. "He looks like an accountant," Myra said. "He is. Who also happens to control smuggling routes worth hundreds of millions, never judged by appearances." Victor swiped to the next photo. "Dmitry Volkov, Elena's ex-husband." That made Myra's head snap up. "Elena's married to one of your enemies?" "Was married. She left him 5 years ago when she realized he was using her diplomatic connections to move illegal weapons. He's been trying to rebuild his reputation ever since. My success irritates him because Elena works for me now, and he sees that as betrayal." "Is he dangerous?" "Very, but he's also predictable. He operates on ego and wounded pride. As long as we stay ahead of his moves, he's manageable." The photos continued. A woman who ran real estate schemes that displaced low-income families. A politician who took bribes and hated that Victor had documentation proving it. A financial analyst who'd tried to short Victor's stock and lost everything when Victor outmaneuvered him. "These people all want to hurt you?" Myra asked. "They want to take what's mine or destroy me trying. There's a difference." Victor pocketed his phone. Most of them won't act directly. They'll wait for weakness, for opportunity. Your job is to never give them one. And if they try anyway, then we respond proportionally, or disproportionately, depending on how I feel that day. The casual violence in his tone should have terrified her. Instead, it felt oddly reassuring. She'd married someone who could protect her from threats she was only beginning to understand. "What about Adrian?" she asked. "Is he on the enemy list now?" Victor's expression hardened. "Adrian is a spoiled child throwing a tantrum. He'll make noise for a while, spread rumors, try to damage your reputation. But he won't escalate beyond social warfare because he knows I'd destroy him financially if he did." "You'd really do that? To your own son?" "He stopped being my son when he lied to me about the medical bills and used my money to manipulate you. Family loyalty goes both ways. He broke it first." The bitterness in Victor's voice surprised her. She'd assumed he didn't care about Adrian's betrayal beyond the inconvenience, but there was real anger underneath the controlled exterior. "Did you ever have a good relationship with him?" she asked carefully. "When he was younger, maybe. Before his mother filled his head with ideas about entitlement and shortcuts. Before he learned that charm could get him what discipline and work couldn't." Victor's jaw tightened. "I tried to teach him the value of building something. He only learned how to take." "I'm sorry." "Don't be. He made his choices. We all do." He turned to her, and his expression shifted into something more present. "Speaking of choices, we need to discuss your role in the company. I thought my role was to look good at events and not embarrass you. That's the minimum. I'm offering you more if you want it." Myra sat up straighter. "Like what?" "Elena tells me you have good instincts for reading people. Doctor, Chen says you think strategically when you're not second-guessing yourself. James says you're physically capable of handling stress." Victor leaned back, watching her. "I could use someone like that in my operations." "Doing what exactly?" "Due diligence on potential business partners. Sitting in on negotiations to watch for tells and weaknesses. Eventually, representing me in meetings I can't attend personally." He paused. "It would mean more training, long hours, dealing with people who will test you constantly. But it would also mean real power, not just reflected glory from being my wife." The offer hung between them like a challenge. Myra's mind raced through possibilities and dangers in equal measure. "Why?" she asked. "Why offer this to me?" "Because keeping you ornamental is a waste. Because I'm curious what you'll become if given the tools and opportunity. And because having someone I can trust in the inner circle is more valuable than having someone who just wears my ring." "You trust me? We've known each other for less than 3 weeks. I trust your motivations. You want to be powerful enough that no one can hurt you again. That's something I understand. It makes you predictable in useful ways." Myra thought about the cafe, about night classes she'd probably never finish now, about the small, safe life she'd been building before Adrian shattered it. Then she thought about Richard Pemberton's condescension, about the whispers at the wedding, about every person who'd looked at her like she was a commodity being traded. "I want it," she said. "Whatever you're offering, I want it." Victor's smile was sharp with satisfaction. "Then starting Monday, you're my junior partner. Elena will adjust your training schedule. Dr. Chen will add corporate strategy to your curriculum, and you'll shadow me in meetings until you understand how I operate." "That fast? Why wait? You're already a target by association. Might as well give you the tools to fight back." He stood, offered his hand. She took it, let him pull her to her feet. They stood close enough that she could count his heartbeats if she wanted to. "This is your last chance to stay safe," Victor said quietly. "Once you enter my world for real, you can't claim ignorance or innocence. Everything you see, every decision you participate in, makes you complicit." "Good," Myra said. "I'm tired of being innocent. It didn't protect me before." He kissed her then, slow and deliberate, tasting like whiskey, and promises neither of them fully understood yet. When he pulled back, his thumb traced her jawline with unexpected gentleness. "Get some sleep," he said. "Tomorrow we start building you into something dangerous." Monday arrived with the weight of new beginnings and old fears. Myra dressed in one of the suits Elena had selected, charcoal gray, perfectly tailored, designed to command attention without demanding it. She studied herself in the mirror and saw someone who looked competent, capable. Nothing like the girl who'd worn a red dress and believed in fairy tales. Victor was already in the kitchen when she emerged, reviewing documents on his tablet while drinking coffee that probably cost more per pound than her old hourly wage. "Ready?" he asked without looking up. "As I'll ever be." "Wrong answer. In my world, you're either ready or you're eliminated. Fake confidence until it becomes real." He handed her a tablet identical to his own. "Today's schedule. We have a meeting at 9 with potential investors for a medical research facility. At 11, contract negotiations for the Harbor Point development. Lunch with a city councilwoman who's deciding between 3 bids for a public transportation contract. Afternoon session reviewing quarterly reports from our real estate division." Myra's head spun just reading the list. What am I supposed to do in these meetings? Watch, listen, learn how I read people and situations. When we're alone after each meeting, you'll tell me what you observed. He set down his tablet. Think of it as practical application of everything Dr. Chen taught you. The car ride to Serrano Tower felt different this time. Myra wasn't sneaking in to confront anyone. She was arriving as Victor's wife, his partner, someone with actual authority, even if she didn't fully understand its scope yet. The staff reacted to her presence with careful professionalism. Everyone knew who she was now, what she represented. The security guard who'd questioned her that first night nodded respectfully as they passed. Victor's office had been prepared for 2. A second desk sat at an angle to his, smaller but clearly expensive. Files were already stacked on its surface. "Those are background materials on today's meetings," Victor explained. "You have an hour to review them before the investors arrive." An hour to learn everything about multiple complex business deals? An hour to learn enough to recognize when someone's lying or hiding something. I'm not asking you to negotiate. I'm asking you to observe. He left her there, and Myra dove into the files with desperate focus. The medical facility investors were a group of doctors looking to expand into genomic research. The Harbor Point development involved 3 competing firms, environmental concerns, and political pressure from community groups. The city councilwoman had a voting record that suggested she favored sustainable development but had accepted campaign donations from oil companies. By the time Victor returned with coffee, Myra's brain felt like it was overheating. "Conclusions?" he asked. "The doctors are brilliant but financially naive. The Harbor Point situation is a political minefield, and the councilwoman is either a hypocrite or being blackmailed." Victor's expression shifted into approval. "Elaborate." "The doctors designed their proposal around research value, not profit margins. They'll need guidance to make it attractive to real investors. Harbor Point has too many competing interests. You'll need to give everyone something while appearing to compromise on nothing. And the councilwoman's voting record contradicts her funding sources, which means either she's lying to someone or someone has leverage over her." "Excellent. You're already thinking like a strategist." He handed her the coffee. "During the meetings, I want you to watch faces, not documents. People reveal more through micro-expressions than words. When someone's lying, their tells are physical before they're verbal." The investors arrived at exactly 9 o'clock. 3 doctors in their 50s, impeccably credentialed, clearly uncomfortable in the world of high finance. They presented their proposal with academic precision and obvious passion for the science. Myra watched Victor work. He asked questions that sounded supportive but probed for weaknesses. Where would funding come from after initial investment? What were projected timelines? Who owned the intellectual property? The doctors fumbled. They hadn't thought through commercialization. They wanted to do good science, but hadn't considered market realities. "I appreciate your vision," Victor said finally, "but vision without sustainable economics is just expensive hope. Restructure your proposal to include realistic profit projections, and we'll talk again." After they left, deflated but not defeated, Victor turned to Myra. "What did you see?" "They believed in their work, but they were scared. The older one, Dr. Martinez, kept glancing at his watch. Financial pressure, probably. They need this deal desperately." Which means if you make them a reasonable offer after they restructure, they'll accept. They don't have the luxury of shopping around. Exactly. Desperation is opportunity. Remember that. The Harbor Point negotiations were more complex. Representatives from 3 competing construction firms, an environmental consultant, and a community organizer who clearly distrusted everyone in the room. Victor positioned himself as the reasonable option, promising jobs, green building practices, community investment programs. The competitors attacked each other's proposals. Victor stayed above the fray, occasionally asking pointed questions that made everyone else's weaknesses more visible. By the end, he'd positioned his company as the only one that could deliver what everyone wanted. That was masterful, Myra said quietly as the room cleared. That was chess. Every move designed to limit their options while expanding mine. Victor gathered his materials. The community organizer will oppose us publicly while privately negotiating for what she really wants, a youth center in the development. The environmental consultant is already in our pocket, and the competitors just damaged each other enough that the city council will see us as the safe choice. You planned all of that? I planned possibilities. They chose which ones to make real. He checked his watch. Lunch. Time to see if you can handle one-on-one manipulation. Councilwoman Patricia Hayes met them at an upscale restaurant where privacy cost as much as the food. She was 60, sharp-eyed, with the kind of political smile that never quite reached her eyes. Victor, she said warmly, and this must be the new Mrs. Serrano. Congratulations on your recent marriage. Thank you, Myra replied, remembering Elena's coaching. We're still getting used to the title, but the reality is wonderful. It was exactly the kind of bland, pleasant response that revealed nothing. Patricia's eyes assessed her briefly before returning to Victor. I assume you're here about the transportation contract, Patricia said once they'd ordered, among other things. But yes, I think Serrano Industries is positioned to deliver better value than our competitors. Your competitors say the same thing. My competitors are lying. We both know it. Patricia's smile hardened slightly. That's quite an accusation. It's a statement of fact. Morrison Transit hasn't completed a project on budget in 5 years. Keller Development has ongoing fraud investigations. We're the only firm with both the resources and the clean record to handle this properly. You're also the most expensive bid. Because we don't cut corners. Cheap construction costs more in the long run when systems fail and lawsuits follow. Victor leaned back. You're up for re-election next year. Do you really want to explain why you chose the lowest bidder when the trains break down? Patricia's jaw tightened. Myra watched the calculation happen in real time. Political survival versus immediate cost savings. I need guarantees, Patricia said finally. You'll have them, in writing, with penalty clauses if we fail to deliver. And what do you need from me? Your vote, and your influence over 3 other council members who are undecided. It was a simple transaction, dressed up in legal language and public service rhetoric. Patricia would get political cover. Victor would get the contract. Everyone would pretend it was about serving the public good. I'll think about it, Patricia said, but her tone suggested the decision was already made. After lunch, Victor drove instead of using the car service. He took them away from downtown toward the waterfront where old industrial buildings stood empty and rusting. Where are we going? Myra asked. You did well today. Both meetings. Better than I expected. He pulled into a lot surrounded by chain-link fence. I want to show you something. The building he led her into looked abandoned from the outside. Inside was different. Renovated space, high ceilings, the kind of industrial chic that developers charged premiums for. Except this place was clearly operational, not decorative. People worked at computer stations. Others moved through what looked like inventory storage. Everyone stopped when Victor entered, nodding respectfully before returning to their tasks. What is this place? Myra asked quietly. One of several operations that doesn't appear on official documentation. Victor led her through to an office overlooking the floor. Import-export business, mostly legitimate. Some items move through channels that customs doesn't fully inspect. The implication was clear. You're smuggling. I'm facilitating trade. Whether that trade is legal depends on your perspective and which jurisdiction's laws apply. He gestured to the operation below. This generates $15 million a year, untaxed, untraceable. It funds operations I can't justify through normal corporate channels. Why are you showing me this? Because you asked to understand my world. This is part of it. The part that requires moral flexibility and willingness to operate in gray areas. His eyes held hers. If that's a problem, tell me now. Myra looked down at the workers, at the efficient movement of goods she couldn't identify, at the casual illegality of it all. She should be horrified. should demand he shut this down, or at least keep her separate from it. Instead, she felt a thrill of dark recognition. This was real power. Not the polite fiction of boardrooms and contracts, but the actual machinery of empire built on ruthless pragmatism. What moves through here, she asked. Pharmaceuticals that haven't been approved domestically but work. Technology that's export-controlled but beneficial. Occasionally, items that powerful people need move discreetly. He paused. Nothing that harms innocence. I have lines I don't cross. What lines? No human trafficking, no weapons to conflict zones, no drugs that destroy communities. Beyond that, he shrugged. Morality is negotiable. Myra thought about her parents, about the medical bills Victor had paid through money that might have come from operations like this, about the life she was building on a foundation of moral ambiguity. I can work with that, she said finally. Victor's expression shifted into something that might have been respect. You're sure? I'm sure. Show me how it works. He spent the next 2 hours walking her through the operation, how items were acquired, how they moved through customs with carefully falsified documentation, how money was laundered through legitimate business accounts. It was illegal, efficient, and surprisingly well organized. Marcus Chen runs a similar operation, Victor explained. But he's sloppy, uses violence when strategy would work better. That's why we keep winning territory from him. Is that what the warehouse fire was about? Territory? That was him sending a message after we intercepted 3 of his shipments in 1 month. Cost him millions. Victor's smile was cold. He'll retaliate again. That's why I'm expanding security and why you need to understand the stakes. They returned to Serrano Tower as evening fell. Myra's head swam with information and implications. She'd gone from waitress to mob wife, or at least morally questionable businesswoman, in less than a month. Back in the penthouse, Victor poured drinks and they reviewed the day's meetings with the detailed analysis he'd promised. Myra shared observations about body language, about the moments when people revealed more than they intended. Victor corrected her interpretations, refined her instincts, treated her like a student learning a craft rather than a wife playing at business. You have good instincts, he said as they finished. Raw, but good. With proper training, you'll be genuinely useful. High praise from Victor Serrano. I don't give false compliments, waste of everyone's time. He checked his watch. Tomorrow starts earlier, 6 a.m. We're reviewing security protocols and threat assessments. Romantic. Romance was never part of this deal. But his hand found her waist, pulled her closer. Doesn't mean we can't find other benefits. He kissed her with the controlled intensity she was learning to anticipate. Still careful, still calculated. But with heat underneath that suggested the calculations might be shifting. When they separated, Myra found herself breathless. Is this part of the arrangement too? This is whatever we decide it is. His thumb traced her lower lip. We're married. Sharing a bed occasionally seems reasonable. Occasionally. I'm not demanding anything, but I'm also not pretending I don't want you. His eyes held hers. The question is what you want. Myra thought about separate bedrooms and careful distance and the professional boundaries they'd maintained. Then she thought about the thrill she'd felt watching him operate today, the dark satisfaction of understanding his world, the way power looked on him when he wasn't performing for anyone. I want to stop pretending this is just business, she said quietly. Victor's smile was dangerous. Good. Because I'm tired of sleeping alone when my wife is 20 feet away. He kissed her again, and this time there was no hesitation, no careful control. Just want, and the decision to stop fighting it. They moved to his bedroom, larger than hers, with views that made the city look like something they owned together. Myra felt nerves flutter in her stomach, different from their first night when anger and spite had fueled everything. We can stop, Victor said, reading her hesitation. This doesn't have to be tonight. I don't want to stop, She met his eyes. Last time was about revenge, about hurting Adrian and proving something. This feels different. It is different. This is choosing each other without anger driving the decision. His hands framed her face. Still want it? Yes. He undressed her slowly, like he had all the time in the world and intended to use it. When they finally fell into bed together, it felt less like conquest and more like discovery. Learning each other without the performance, without the desperate need to prove anything. Afterward, Myra lay against his chest, listening to his heartbeat slow back to normal. His arm wrapped around her like a declaration of ownership that she'd stopped resenting. "We should move your things into here," Victor said into the darkness. "The separate bedroom fiction isn't convincing anyone. Elena will have thoughts about that. Elena's job is to make you dangerous, not manage our sleeping arrangements." His hand traced patterns on her shoulder. "Unless you want space." "No, I'm tired of space, tired of pretending we're not actually in this together." "We are," he confirmed, "for better or worse. Literally, as of 3 days ago." Myra smiled against his skin. "Do you ever regret it? Offering marriage instead of just sending me away?" "No. Do you regret accepting?" She thought about it honestly. About everything she'd lost and everything she'd gained and the person she was becoming in the space between. "No," she said finally. "I don't." "Good. Because I have plans for you, Myra Serrano, and they require you to stay." "What kind of plans?" "The kind where you become powerful enough that people fear disappointing you almost as much as they fear disappointing me." He shifted, looked down at her. "You felt it today, didn't you, during the meetings? The rush of understanding how power works and knowing you could wield it." "Yes. That's what I'm cultivating, not a trophy wife. A partner who can stand beside me and match my ruthlessness when necessary." His expression was serious. "But it requires commitment, full commitment. Are you ready for that?" Myra thought about the warehouse, about the gray morality, about the enemies who would see her as leverage or target, about the girl she'd been and the woman she was choosing to become. "I'm ready," she said. And somewhere in the darkness of that expensive bedroom, with the city spread below them like a kingdom waiting to be claimed, Myra meant it. The transformation had begun with a red dress and shattered illusions. But it would be completed through fire, blood, and the ruthless education Victor Serrano was determined to provide. She just didn't know yet how much it would cost her. The cost became clear 3 weeks later when Marcus Chen made his next move. Myra was reviewing financial projections in Victor's office. Their office now, since she'd claimed the second desk as her own, when the call came through. Victor's expression went cold in a way she'd learned to recognize as dangerous. "When?" he asked, voice flat. A pause. "Casualties?" Another pause, longer this time. "Lock down all other sites. I'm on my way." He hung up and was moving before Myra could ask questions. She followed him to the elevator, matching his pace. "What happened?" "The waterfront facility. Someone hit it 30 minutes ago. 4 people injured, 2 critical. The entire operation is compromised." His jaw was tight enough to crack stone. "Chen's getting bolder." The drive took 15 minutes that felt like hours. When they arrived, emergency vehicles blocked the street. Fire trucks, ambulances, police cars with lights painting the scene in urgent red and blue. Smoke still rose from shattered windows. Victor's head of security met them at the perimeter. Thomas Reeves was ex-military, built like he could bend steel with his bare hands, and currently looked like he wanted to shoot someone. "Status," Victor demanded. "Incendiary device, time to detonate during shift change for maximum casualties. 4 workers caught in the blast. Martinez and Ochoa are critical. 3rd-degree burns, smoke inhalation. The others will survive." Reeves's face was grim. "They knew exactly when to hit us. Someone talked." "Find out who." Victor's voice carried lethal promise. "I want names by tonight." Myra watched emergency personnel load stretchers into ambulances. One of the injured was young, couldn't be more than 25. His face was wrapped in gauze, but she could see his hands, blistered and raw. "This is my fault," she said quietly. Victor turned sharply. "What?" "You showed me the operation. Maybe someone saw us, figured out what it meant, used me as a way to track—" "Stop." His hand gripped her shoulder. "This isn't about you. Chen's been planning this for weeks, minimum. The timing is coincidence." "You don't believe in coincidence." "I believe in Chen being a vindictive bastard who's been waiting for an opening." He released her shoulder. "Thomas, I want surveillance footage from every camera within 3 blocks. Cross-reference with known Chen associates, and get our people out of the other facilities until we confirm they're secure." "Already in progress." Reeves glanced at Myra. "Should Mrs. Serrano be here? If this was a targeted attack, she stays with me, non-negotiable." They spent the next 3 hours coordinating damage control. Victor made calls to lawyers, to politicians who owed him favors, to other business owners who needed to know Chen had escalated. Myra watched him operate with cold efficiency, transforming rage into strategy. But underneath the control, she could see the fury, could see it in the way his hands clenched when no one was watching, in the muscle jumping in his jaw, in the calculations happening behind his eyes that probably involved Chen's painful demise. "We need to respond," she said, when they were finally alone in the car heading back to Serrano Tower. "We will." "When?" "When I've identified every piece on the board and know exactly how much damage I can inflict without triggering a full war." He stared out the window at the city scrolling past. "Chen wants me angry. Wants me to retaliate impulsively so he can justify escalation to his own people. I won't give him that satisfaction." "So we just let him get away with nearly killing 4 people? We make him pay in ways he doesn't expect, ways that hurt worse than violence." Victor's smile was cruel. "I'm going to destroy his business piece by piece until he has nothing left. Then, when he's desperate and broken, I'll decide whether he lives with the consequences or doesn't live at all." The darkness in his voice should have frightened her. Instead, Myra felt a matching anger rising in her chest. Those workers had been doing their jobs, following orders. They didn't deserve to burn because of some corporate rivalry dressed up as gang warfare. "How can I help?" she asked. Victor looked at her then, really looked, and something shifted in his expression. "You want to be part of this? The actual retaliation, not just the legitimate business side?" "I want Chen to regret ever thinking he could attack what's ours." "Ours?" He repeated the word like he was testing its weight. "You're claiming ownership now." "I'm your wife, your partner. That facility was part of our operation. So yes, ours." Victor's hand found hers, squeezed once. "Then we start with information. I need to know everything about Chen's operations, suppliers, distributors, weak points in his organization. Think you can handle that kind of research?" "Yes." "It means digging through financial records, surveillance data, interviewing people who might not want to talk. It means getting your hands dirty with the kind of information that makes you legally complicit." "I'm already complicit. I've been in your world for 3 weeks. I know what we do, what you built this on. Stop trying to protect me from consequences I've already accepted." He pulled her closer, kissed her hard enough to bruise. When he released her, his eyes held something that might have been pride. "Then let's go to war." The next 2 weeks consumed Myra completely. She worked with Dr. Chen, no relation to Marcus, to analyze financial patterns in the shipping industry. She reviewed surveillance footage until her eyes burned. She sat in on interviews with informants who sold information for cash or protection or the simple satisfaction of seeing enemies destroyed. Elena adjusted her training to include interrogation techniques and threat assessment. James added weapons handling to her physical conditioning. Myra learned to shoot, to fight dirty, to recognize when someone was lying and when they were scared enough to tell the truth. "You're changing," Elena observed one afternoon during a break between sessions. "Is that a problem?" "It's inevitable. Victor doesn't keep soft things around him. They either harden or break." Elena's expression was unreadable. "I'm just curious which you'll be. The woman who hardens into something as ruthless as he is, or the one who breaks and blames him for it?" "I won't break." "They all say that. Then they see what this life actually requires and realize the cost is higher than they calculated." Myra thought about the burned workers, about the casual violence of Chen's attack, about the empire built on moral flexibility and strategic cruelty that she'd married into. "I'm not breaking," she said firmly. "I'm becoming what I need to be to survive this." "And what's that?" "Dangerous enough that people think twice before attacking what's mine." Elena smiled then, sharp and approving. "Good answer. Now let's make sure you can back it up." The information Myra compiled painted a detailed picture of Chen's operation. He controlled shipping routes through the harbor, yes, but his real money came from pharmaceutical smuggling, knockoff medications that undercut legitimate suppliers. He had 3 primary warehouses, a network of distributors, and relationships with customs officials who looked the other way for the right price. Myra brought her findings to Victor late one night in their bedroom. He was already in bed reviewing his own files, reading glasses perched on his nose in a way that made him look almost professorial. "I found the weak point," she announced. He set aside his tablet. "Show me." She spread her documentation across the bed. Financial records, shipping manifests, a network map she'd created showing Chen's connections. His pharmaceutical suppliers are based in 3 countries with different regulatory standards. If one gets shut down, he can't replace the volume fast enough. His distributors would go elsewhere, and he'd lose market share permanently. She pointed to highlighted sections. This supplier in Eastern Europe is the biggest. They're also the most vulnerable to pressure. What kind of pressure? The kind where someone anonymously reports their operation to international regulatory agencies with evidence of contamination in their products. They get shut down for investigation, Chen loses supply, and we're positioned to absorb his distributors while he's scrambling. Victor studied her work with an intensity that made her nervous. Then he pulled her down beside him, kissed her thoroughly. "Brilliant," he said against her mouth. "Absolutely brilliant. We destroy his business without violence, without anything that traces back to us. I learned from the best. You're surpassing your teacher." He gathered the documents. "I'll have contacts reach out to the regulatory agencies tomorrow. Within a week, Chen's operation starts crumbling. And then? Then we watch him flail, let him make mistakes. When he's weak enough, we make him an offer. Work for us or lose everything. He won't accept. Probably not. But the offer will demoralize his people, make them wonder if they're backing the wrong side. That's when we recruit his best operators and leave him with nothing but his pride." It was ruthless, comprehensive, exactly the kind of strategic destruction Victor had promised. Myra felt satisfaction burn through her like whiskey. This was what power looked like. Not violence, though that remained an option, but the ability to dismantle someone's entire world through information and pressure and perfectly timed moves. "I want to be there," she said. "When you make the offer, I want him to see me." "Why?" "Because he burned our people. And I want him to know that I helped destroy him for it." Victor's expression was dark with approval. "You're learning to enjoy this. Should I not? Enjoy it all you want. Just don't let it consume you." He pulled her against him. "There's a difference between being strategic and being cruel for cruelty's sake. Stay on the right side of that line." "Where's the line?" "You'll know when you cross it. Trust me." The regulatory shutdown happened exactly as Myra predicted. Chen's main supplier was raided by international authorities, their entire operation frozen pending investigation. Within 48 hours, Chen's distributors started reaching out to Victor's people looking for alternative sources. Victor took the meetings personally, bringing Myra along as his silent partner. She watched him negotiate with people who'd worked for Chen for years, offering them better rates, safer operations, protection from the kind of regulatory scrutiny that had just destroyed their previous supplier. "Mr. Chen is a liability now," Victor explained to one distributor, a nervous man in his 60s who'd been moving pharmaceuticals since before Myra was born. "Working with him means risking everything. Working with me means stability." "Marcus won't take this well," the man said. "Marcus doesn't have a choice. His supplier is gone. His operation is bleeding money daily. He can either accept that his time is over or watch while we take everything anyway." Victor's smile was cold. "Your choice is simpler. Work with the winner or go down with the loser." The man chose survival. They all did. Within 10 days, Chen had lost 70% of his distribution network. His remaining operations were barely functional, and his own people were starting to question his leadership. That's when Victor made the call. Myra sat beside him in the office, listening as he delivered the offer with perfect professional courtesy. "Marcus, I think we both know your current situation is untenable. I'm prepared to make you a generous offer. Fold your remaining operations into mine. You'd maintain a supervisory role, keep a percentage of profits, avoid the rather unpleasant reality of bankruptcy." Chen's response was loud enough that Myra could hear it through the phone. Cursing, accusations, threats of violence. Victor listened with the patience of someone who'd already won. When Chen finally ran out of words, Victor's response was calm. "I'll take that as a no. Unfortunate. The offer expires in 24 hours. After that, I stop being generous and start being thorough." He paused. Oh, and Marcus? The fire at my facility? The workers who were injured? I know that was you. Consider this professional courtesy. Next time you attack what's mine, I won't stop at destroying your business. I'll destroy you personally. Understood? He hung up before Chen could respond. That was a threat, Myra observed. That was a promise. There's a difference. Victor set down the phone. He won't accept. His pride won't allow it, which means we move to phase 2. What's phase 2? We take his remaining assets through legal channels. I've already filed injunctions claiming he owes us damages for the warehouse fire. His lawyers will fight it, but by the time it's resolved, he'll have spent everything on legal fees and have nothing left to defend. That's vicious. That's business and justice, considering what he did to our people. Victor's expression was hard. Martinez died this morning. Burns were too severe. Ochoa is still critical, so yes, I'm being vicious. Chen earned it. The news hit Myra like a physical blow. Martinez, she'd seen him being loaded into the ambulance, had watched him fight for breath. Now he was gone because Chen had wanted to send a message. I want to see Chen, she said quietly. Face to face, before you destroy him completely. Why? Because I want him to know that I was part of this. That the woman he probably dismissed as Victor Serrano's trophy wife helped dismantle everything he built. Victor studied her for a long moment. You understand he might try to hurt you? Use you as leverage? Then he'll learn that was a mistake. She met his eyes. I'm not asking permission. I'm telling you I'm doing this, with or without you. His smile was sharp. With me. Always with me. We'll arrange a meeting. The meeting happened 2 days later at a neutral location, an upscale hotel bar where violence would be witnessed and weapons were prohibited by security. Chen arrived looking worse than his photos suggested. Older, worn, with the desperate edge of someone watching their empire crumble. He saw Victor first, then his eyes landed on Myra, and confusion flickered across his face. You brought your wife to a business meeting? I brought my partner, Victor corrected. Myra's been instrumental in our recent success. I thought she deserved to see the results firsthand. Chen's expression darkened as understanding dawned. She helped you. She orchestrated it, Victor said with evident pride. The supplier shut down, the distributor recruitment, the legal strategy. All her work. I just executed her plan. It was an exaggeration, but Myra didn't correct him. She watched Chen process the information, watched his anger shift from Victor to her. You're making a mistake, Chen said directly to her. Victor Serrano destroys everything he touches. You think you're his partner now, but you're just another asset he'll discard when you're no longer useful. Funny, Myra replied calmly. That's exactly what I thought about you, but it turns out you're the one being discarded. Chen's hands clenched. You have no idea what you're involved in. The kind of people Victor does business with, the things he's done, I know exactly what he's done, what we've done together. And I'm comfortable with it. She leaned forward slightly. You burned our facility, killed one of our people, injured 3 others. Did you think there wouldn't be consequences? That was business. So is this. The difference is we're better at it than you are. Victor's hand found hers under the table, squeezed once in approval. Chen saw the gesture and something like fear flashed in his eyes. Last chance, Victor said. 24 hours is almost up. Accept the offer or watch while we take everything. I'll rebuild, Chen said, but his voice lacked conviction. With what? Your suppliers are gone. Your distributors work for me now. Your assets are tied up in litigation. You have nothing left but debt and enemies. Victor stood, helped Myra to her feet. Go ahead and try. We'll be watching. They left Chen sitting alone at the bar, staring into his drink like it might contain answers. Outside, Myra felt adrenaline singing through her veins. She'd just confronted a dangerous man, had looked him in the eyes and told him she'd help destroy him, and it felt powerful, intoxicating. You enjoyed that, Victor observed as they reached the car. I did. Is that wrong? It's human. You stood up to someone who hurt people under our protection. That's worth enjoying. He pulled her close. But remember what I said. There's a line between justice and cruelty. We've delivered justice. Don't let it become something else. How do you know the difference? When you stop caring about the why and only care about the hurt you're causing, you've crossed it. His hand cupped her face. You're not there yet. Stay aware enough that you never get there. Chen rejected the offer. Victor proceeded with the legal assault, and within a month, Chen's remaining operations were bankrupt. His people scattered to other organizations, some to Victor's, some to competitors. Chen himself disappeared from the industry entirely, broken and irrelevant. Myra watched it happen with satisfaction that gradually shifted to something more complicated. They'd won, decisively. But the victory felt hollow somehow, like they'd proven a point without solving anything fundamental. What's wrong? Victor asked one night as they lay in bed reviewing the final dissolution of Chen's empire. I thought it would feel better. The winning. It never does. That's the secret they don't tell you about power. The victories are hollow, and the defeats are catastrophic. You do it anyway because the alternative is being the one who gets destroyed. That's bleak. That's honest. He set aside his tablet. You did well, though. Better than well. You dismantled a rival operation using nothing but intelligence and strategy. That's rare. I had a good teacher. You had good instincts. I just showed you how to weaponize them. Myra shifted to face him. What happens now? Chen's gone. We won. What's the next move? We consolidate. Absorb what's useful from his operation, strengthen our position, and prepare for whoever thinks Chen's absence creates an opportunity. He pulled her against him. And we build you a reputation. People need to know that Myra Serrano isn't just a name. She's a threat. How do we do that? By putting you in charge of something significant. Let you prove yourself publicly. His fingers traced patterns on her skin. I'm thinking the Harbor Point development. It's high profile enough to matter, complex enough to be challenging. Win that, and everyone will know you're not ornamental. I've only been doing this for 6 weeks. And you've already helped destroy a rival operation. You're ready. What if I'm not? What if I fail? Then we learn from it and move forward. But I don't think you'll fail. His eyes held hers. You're smarter than you give yourself credit for, and you're ruthless enough when necessary. That combination is powerful. I learned it from watching you. You had it already. I just gave you permission to use it. The Harbor Point project consumed the next month. Myra worked 16-hour days learning construction schedules, environmental regulations, community investment requirements, and the complex politics of city development. Victor assigned her a team, lawyers, architects, community liaisons, but made clear the final decisions were hers. If this fails, it fails on your authority, he said. Own it completely. She did. Made decisions that sometimes contradicted her team's recommendations. Negotiated directly with community organizers who wanted to see her fail. Handled city council presentations without Victor's presence to back her up. It was terrifying, exhilarating, proof that she could operate independently in his world and survive. The approval came through on a Thursday. The city council voted 6-3 in favor of Serrano Industries' proposal for Harbor Point. Myra was in the council chambers when they announced it, surrounded by competitors who'd lost and community members who'd fought the development. She kept her expression neutral through the vote, shook hands with council members with appropriate gratitude, and waited until she was in the car before letting the triumph show. Victor was on the phone when she returned to the office, but his eyes found hers immediately. She nodded once, and his expression shifted into satisfaction. I'll call you back, he said, ending the call. Well? We won, 6-3. Construction starts in 6 weeks. He crossed to her, pulled her into a kiss that tasted like victory and pride. You won. This was your project. You gave me the team. You made the decisions. You handled the politics. You earned this. His hands framed her face. How does it feel? Like I can do anything. Good. Remember that feeling. You'll need it. That night, they celebrated privately. Champagne that probably cost more than Myra used to make in a month. Dinner prepared by Victor's personal chef. Sex that felt less like transaction and more like genuine connection between two people who'd chosen each other despite impossible circumstances. Afterward, lying in the darkness with the city lights painting patterns across the ceiling, Myra felt something shift inside her. The girl who'd worn a red dress and believed in romance was completely gone now. In her place was someone harder, sharper, capable of things that would have horrified her 6 weeks ago. "Victor," she said quietly, "thank you." "For what?" "For not sending me away that first night, for seeing something in me worth developing, for making me dangerous instead of keeping me safe." He pulled her closer. "I was selfish. I saw someone with potential and decided to keep her." "I don't think it was selfish. I think you saw someone drowning and threw them a weapon instead of a life preserver. Is that what you needed?" Myra thought about it honestly. Yes, I didn't want to be saved. I wanted to be armed. And now? Now I'm dangerous, just like you promised. His laugh was quiet. "You have no idea. But you will." The statement hung in the air like prophecy. Myra didn't ask what he meant. Didn't need to. She was learning that in Victor's world, threats came from every direction, and survival required constant evolution. She'd evolved from victim to survivor to something sharper. The question was what came next. The answer arrived 3 days later when Elena burst into the office with an expression Myra had never seen before, actual fear. "We have a problem," Elena announced. "Dmitri knows about Myra, and he's coming." Victor's reaction was immediate and controlled in a way that made Myra's stomach drop. He didn't ask questions, didn't demand explanations, just stood and moved to the safe hidden behind a painting of the city skyline, extracting a handgun that he checked with practiced efficiency before sliding it into a shoulder holster. "How long do we have?" he asked Elena. "He landed 2 hours ago, private airfield outside the city. My contact said he brought 8 men with him, all armed, all experienced." Elena's accent thickened with stress. "He called me, said he wants to meet the woman who replaced me in your organization." "It's not about Myra," Victor said. "It's about you. He's using her as bait to draw you out." "I know, that's why I came directly instead of calling. If he has people watching, they saw me enter, he'll expect me to be here." Myra's mind raced through what she knew about Dmitry Volkov. Ex-husband, weapons dealer. Dangerous enough that Victor had listed him among serious threats, and now he was here, in the city, looking for leverage. "What does he want?" Myra asked. Elena's laugh was bitter. "Revenge! Control! To prove he's still powerful enough to hurt Victor through the people he values." She met Myra's eyes. "I left him 5 years ago and took evidence of his illegal operations with me. He's been trying to rebuild his reputation ever since. Victor hiring me was the final insult. So this is about pride." "Everything with Dmitri is about pride. He can't stand being diminished, being left, being seen as weak." Elena's expression was grim. "He won't kill you outright. He'll want to use you to negotiate, force Victor to give him something valuable in exchange for your safety." "Then we don't give him the opportunity," Victor said. "Thomas is already securing the building. We move you both to the safe house until Dmitri makes his actual play." "No." The word came out of Myra before she'd fully thought it through. Both Victor and Elena turned to stare at her. "No?" Victor repeated carefully. "No. I'm not hiding in a safe house while Dmitri thinks he can use me as leverage. That makes me exactly what everyone already assumes I am. A weakness. A vulnerability." Myra stood, forcing her voice to stay steady. "You said you wanted me to be dangerous, to build a reputation. Running and hiding doesn't accomplish that." "Being dead accomplishes even less," Victor said flatly. "I'm not planning to be dead. I'm planning to handle this." She looked at Elena. "You said he wants to meet me, so let him. On our terms, in a place we control, with advantages he doesn't expect." Victor's jaw tightened. "Absolutely not. Dmitri is not Marcus Chen. He doesn't play corporate games. He kills people when they inconvenience him. Then we make sure we're more dangerous than inconvenient." Myra moved to the desk, pulled up the files Victor had shown her weeks ago, found Dmitri's profile, and studied it with new eyes. "He's arrogant, thinks women are either possessions or tools. He'll underestimate me because I'm young and because I'm your wife. We use that." "Use it how?" Elena asked quietly. "We give him what he thinks he wants. A meeting with me. But instead of me being bait, I become the trap." Myra looked at Victor. "You've been training me for 6 weeks, teaching me to read people, to strategize, to handle threats. Let me prove I learned something." The silence stretched. Victor stared at her with an expression that mixed fury and something that might have been fear with reluctant respect. "If I allow this," he said slowly, "you follow my rules exactly. No improvisation, no heroics. The moment I say you're out, you're out. Agreed. And you wear a wire. Elena and I hear everything. Armed security within 30 seconds of your location at all times. Fine. And if this goes wrong, if Dmitri even looks at you the wrong way, I will burn down everything he's built and salt the earth behind me. Clear?" The protective fury in his voice made something warm bloom in Myra's chest despite the fear. "Clear." Elena exhaled slowly. "You're both insane. But if we're doing this, we do it right. Dmitri will expect a public location, restaurant, hotel bar, somewhere with witnesses. We choose somewhere that looks public but gives us control." "The gallery," Myra said suddenly. "The art gallery on 5th. Victor's company owns it. We can clear it, control access, make it look like a private showing." Victor pulled out his phone. "I'll have it arranged. Thomas can position people as gallery staff, security, even other guests. Dmitri won't know who's ours and who's neutral." "He'll bring his own people," Elena warned. "Let him. We'll know exactly how many and where they are at all times." Victor's eyes found Myra's. "You're sure about this?" She thought about everything that had happened since the red dress and shattered illusions. About choosing to be dangerous instead of safe. About the person she'd become and the reputation she was building. "I'm sure." The arrangements took 4 hours. Elena reached out to Dmitri through carefully neutral channels, suggesting that Myra was interested in meeting the man everyone spoke of with such fear. The message was designed to appeal to his ego while seeming naive enough to be believable. Dmitri responded within 30 minutes. He'd meet her at 8 o'clock. He'd bring 2 bodyguards. He expected privacy. "He's lying about the number," Elena said. "He'll bring at least 4, probably 6, and they'll all be armed. So will we," Victor replied. He'd spent the afternoon coordinating with Thomas, positioning people throughout the gallery and surrounding blocks. Myra counted at least 15 operatives on their side, all trained, all loyal, all ready to respond if things went wrong. By 7 o'clock, Myra was dressed in a black dress that Elena had selected. Elegant but practical, easy to move in, with pockets deep enough for the small weapon Victor insisted she carry. "Do you remember how to use it?" he asked, watching her check the safety. "Point and squeeze, aim for center mass. Don't hesitate." "And if you have to shoot?" "I shoot until the threat stops being a threat." The words felt surreal coming out of her mouth, but she meant them. She'd crossed too many lines to pretend violence wasn't an option. Victor pulled her close, kissed her with an intensity that felt like goodbye. "You don't have to do this. We can still move you to safety. I have to do this. For me. To prove I belong in your world for real, not just as someone you're protecting." "You already belong." "Then let me prove it to everyone else." The gallery was beautiful in the way expensive things always were. High ceilings, perfect lighting, art that probably cost more than most people made in a decade. Myra walked through it with Elena at her side, both of them wearing wires that connected to Victor's position in the security office 2 floors above. "He's early," Victor's voice came through the small earpiece. 3 vehicles just pulled up. I count 8 men total, all armed. Dimitri's in the middle vehicle." "8," Elena muttered. "Bastard can't even lie convincingly about numbers." Myra's heart hammered against her ribs, but she kept her breathing steady. She'd studied Dimitri's file until she could recite it, knew his patterns, his tells, his pressure points. The question was whether theory would translate to practice. The gallery doors opened. Dmitri Volkov entered like he owned the space, flanked by men who looked ex-military and moved like violence was always their first option. He was handsome in a brutal way, sharp features, cold eyes, expensive suit that couldn't quite hide the predator underneath. His gaze swept the gallery, cataloged the 2 women standing near a sculpture worth 7 figures, and landed on Myra with calculating interest. "Mrs. Serrano," he said, accent making the name sound like an insult. "How kind of you to agree to meet." "Mr. Volkov, your reputation precedes you, as does yours, though it's much newer." He moved closer, and his bodyguards fanned out with practiced efficiency. "Victor Serrano's child bride, the waitress who somehow convinced a ruthless businessman to marry her. I admit, I'm curious how you managed it. The same way any successful negotiation happens. I offered something he wanted. And what was that? Your youth? Your innocence. His smile was cruel. Or perhaps just your willingness to overlook the bodies he's buried to build his empire? Perhaps my ability to help him bury more. Myra kept her voice calm, channeling every lesson Elena and Victor had drilled into her. Was there a point to this meeting, Mr. Volkov? Or did you just want to insult me in person? Dmitri's expression shifted into something darker. Direct. I appreciate that. So I'll be equally direct. I want Elena returned to me. She took something when she left. Information, documents, evidence that could damage my business. Victor refuses to negotiate. But perhaps you're more reasonable. Elena doesn't belong to anyone. She works for us because she chooses to. She works for you because Victor offered her protection from me. Remove that protection, and she'll have no choice but to return. Myra glanced at Elena, who stood absolutely still, face carefully blank. But Myra could see the tension in her shoulders, the way her hand hovered near her own concealed weapon. What makes you think I have the authority to remove Victor's protection from anyone? Myra asked. Because you're his wife, his weakness. Dmitri moved closer, and Myra fought the urge to step back. He values you, which means you have leverage. Convince him to return Elena, and everyone walks away intact. And if I refuse, then I take what I want anyway, starting with you. It wasn't a bluff. Myra could see it in his eyes, in the way his bodyguard shifted position, in the tension suddenly saturating the air. That would be a mistake, she said quietly. Would it? You're one woman surrounded by my men. Victor's security can't reach you fast enough to matter. Elena is skilled, but outnumbered. The mathematics are simple. The mathematics assume I'm helpless. That's your first error. Dmitri laughed. You've had what, 6 weeks of training? You think that makes you dangerous? I think underestimating me makes you stupid. There's a difference. His hand moved fast, reaching for her arm, probably intending to restrain her as leverage. But Myra had spent weeks training with James for exactly this scenario. She shifted, redirected his momentum, and used his own force to put him off balance. The gallery erupted. Dmitri's men drew weapons. Elena moved with lethal grace, disarming the nearest bodyguard and using his own gun against another. Victor's operatives revealed themselves, gallery staff pulling weapons, security dropping the pretense of neutrality, 3 men appearing from what had seemed like empty rooms. Myra didn't think, just reacted. Pulled her weapon and pointed it at Dmitri's chest as he recovered his balance. Don't, she said simply. He froze. Not because of the gun. Myra could see in his eyes that he didn't fully believe she'd shoot, but because the gallery was now filled with at least 12 armed people, all aimed at his men, all clearly on Victor's payroll. The mathematics changed, Myra continued. You're outnumbered, outmaneuvered, and out of options. So here's my counteroffer. You leave the city tonight. You forget about Elena. You forget about using me as leverage. And in exchange, you get to walk out of here alive. Victor won't let this stand. He'll come for me eventually. Victor doesn't need to. I just proved I can handle you myself. She didn't lower the weapon. Last chance. Take the offer or we find out if I'm willing to shoot. Dmitri's eyes flickered to Elena, to the armed operatives, to the impossible situation he'd walked into. His pride wanted him to fight, but survival instinct won. This isn't over, he said. Yes, it is. You just don't want to admit it. Myra gestured with the gun. Walk away, Dmitri, while you still can. He stared at her for one more long moment, then turned and walked toward the exit, his men following with weapons still drawn but no longer aimed. The gallery doors closed behind them, and the tension held for 3 more heartbeats before shattering. Myra's hands started shaking. She lowered the weapon carefully, engaged the safety like Victor had taught her, and tried to process what had just happened. Elena grabbed her shoulders. Are you insane? You could have been killed. But I wasn't. We controlled the situation exactly like we planned. Plans go wrong. Dmitri could have shot you before we reacted. But he didn't, because he underestimated me just like you said he would. Myra looked at the woman who'd trained her, who'd turned her from naive waitress into someone capable of facing down weapons dealers. I learned from the best. Victor appeared from the security office, taking the stairs 3 at a time. He crossed the gallery in long strides and pulled Myra into an embrace that felt like he was confirming she was real and alive. "Don't ever do that again," he said against her hair. "Do what?" "Exactly what we planned." "Redirect his grab. That wasn't in the plan. You improvised." "I adapted. There's a difference." He pulled back enough to look at her, and his expression was torn between fury and pride. "You could have been hurt. I could have been safe in hiding while Dmitri thought I was a weakness he could exploit. Instead, he knows now that I'm not, that I can handle myself, that attacking me comes with consequences." She met his eyes. "Isn't that what you wanted? For me to be dangerous?" "I wanted you dangerous and safe. Apparently that's not compatible. Nothing about your world is compatible with safety. You taught me that." Victor's hand cupped her face. "You're going to give me a heart attack. You're going to survive. We both are. That's the point." Thomas appeared, phone in hand. "Dimitri's convoy is leaving the city, heading north toward the Canadian border. We're tracking them to confirm." "Let them go," Victor said, "but maintain surveillance. If he deviates from leaving the country, I want to know immediately." The operatives began clearing out, returning to their regular positions or disappearing into the night. Elena supervised the cleanup with practiced efficiency, making sure no evidence remained of what had happened here. Myra sank onto a bench beneath a painting of a storm-tossed sea and let the adrenaline drain out of her system. Her hands were still shaking, but from reaction now rather than fear. Victor sat beside her, didn't speak, just took her hand and held it until the shaking stopped. "I was terrified," she admitted quietly. "Good. Fear keeps you sharp. It's when you stop being afraid that you make fatal mistakes." "Were you afraid?" "Absolutely. Watching you face down Dmitri from a security camera 2 floors away while being completely unable to help if things went wrong, that was the longest 3 minutes of my life." "But you let me do it anyway." "Because you were right. You needed to prove yourself, not to me, to yourself." He turned to face her. "You understand now, don't you? What it actually means to be part of this world. It's not strategy sessions and business meetings. It's standing in front of dangerous men with a gun and knowing you might have to use it." "I know, and I'm still choosing it." "Why?" Myra thought about the question honestly. Because being safe meant being powerless. Being vulnerable to people like Adrian, who saw me as entertainment. People like Dmitri, who see women as possessions. I'd rather be dangerous and in control of my life than safe and at someone else's mercy. Even if it costs you the person you used to be? That person was already gone. You just helped me become something better. Victor pulled her close, and they sat there surrounded by millions of dollars worth of art, while Elena orchestrated cleanup and Thomas confirmed Dimitri's retreat, and the city lights sparkled beyond the gallery windows like diamonds scattered across velvet. "What happens now?" Myra asked eventually. "Now we go home. Debrief properly. And tomorrow, we continue building the empire you just proved you can help defend." "That's it? No consequences for improvising?" "The consequence is you survived and Dmitri retreated. That's the only outcome that matters." He stood, offered his hand. "Come on. I want you away from this location until we're certain Dmitri is actually leaving." The car ride back to Serrano Tower was quiet. Elena sat in the front with Thomas, discussing security protocols and potential retaliation scenarios. Victor and Myra sat in the back, her head on his shoulder, his arm around her waist. "I need to tell you something," Myra said as they pulled into the underground garage. "What?" "When I pointed the gun at Dmitri, when I gave him the ultimatum, I meant it. If he'd reached for me again, I would have shot him." Victor's arm tightened around her. "I know. That should horrify me. The fact that I could kill someone without hesitation. But it doesn't. No. And I don't know what that says about me. It says you're a survivor, that you value your life enough to protect it without apology." He tilted her chin up. "It says you've become exactly what you needed to be. The question is whether you can live with that." Myra thought about Martinez dying from burns Chen had inflicted, about the workers who'd been injured, about the casual violence that permeated this world, about the choices she'd made that led her here. "I can live with it," she said, "because the alternative is being the girl who trusted the wrong person and almost gave away everything to someone who saw her as a joke. I won't be her again." "No, you won't." He kissed her forehead. You're Myra Serrano now, my wife, my partner, someone dangerous enough that weapons dealers think twice before targeting her. They rode the private elevator to the penthouse in silence. Inside, Victor poured whiskey while Myra kicked off her heels and tried to process everything that had happened in the last 4 hours. Elena will stay here tonight, Victor said, handing her a glass, until we're certain Dmitri is out of the country. Is she okay? Seeing him again? Elena's stronger than she looks. Leaving Dmitri nearly killed her, but she survived it. Tonight was just confirmation that she made the right choice. Myra sipped the whiskey and felt it burn warmth through her system. Victor? Yes? When you first offered me this arrangement, you said you wanted to see if I'd survive becoming part of your world or break trying. Do you have your answer now? He moved to where she stood by the windows overlooking the city that felt increasingly like territory they controlled together. His hand settled on her waist, familiar and possessive. I have my answer. You're not just surviving. You're thriving, becoming something more dangerous than I anticipated and more valuable than I calculated. Is that good or bad? It's complicated. You were supposed to be a convenient solution to social problems and a weapon I pointed at enemies. Instead, you've become, he paused, searching for words, someone I actually trust. Someone I want beside me, not because it's strategic, but because you make this empire feel like something worth building instead of just maintaining. The admission hung between them, more vulnerable than anything he'd said before. I didn't expect to care about you, Myra said quietly. This was supposed to be survival, protection in exchange for partnership. But somewhere between the training and the business meetings and facing down your enemies, it became something else. What did it become? Real. Whatever this is between us, it's not pretend anymore. Victor's expression was unreadable in the low light. Are you saying you love me? I'm saying I choose you, every day. Not because I'm trapped or grateful or scared of the alternative. Because you gave me the tools to become powerful and trusted me to use them. Because you see me as a partner instead of a possession. She met his eyes. Is that love? I don't know. But it's real and it matters, and I'm not walking away from it. He kissed her then, and it felt different from all the other times. Less calculated, less controlled. Just two people who'd built something unexpected from a foundation of revenge and practicality. When they finally separated, Victor rested his forehead against hers. I don't know if I'm capable of love the way normal people experience it, but I know I don't want to do this without you. Build the empire, fight the wars, navigate the darkness. You make it feel less empty. That's enough, for now. And later? Later we figure out what comes next, together. The months that followed established a new rhythm. Myra took on more responsibilities within Serrano Industries. Not just Harbor Point, but other developments, acquisitions, strategic initiatives that required the combination of intelligence and ruthlessness she'd cultivated. She attended meetings without Victor, negotiated deals independently, earned respect from people who'd initially dismissed her as trophy wife. The Harbor Point development broke ground 6 weeks after the confrontation with Dmitri. Myra stood beside Victor at the ceremony, wearing hard hat and designer suit, smiling for cameras while community organizers praised their investment in local jobs and sustainable design. How does it feel? Victor asked quietly while photographers captured the moment. Like I built something real, something that'll outlast the gossip and the judgments. You did. This is yours. You earned it. The project became her flagship accomplishment, but not her only one. She identified 3 additional development opportunities that Victor's team had overlooked. Negotiated a partnership with a medical research facility that positioned them for pharmaceutical patents. Built relationships with community organizations that made future projects easier to approve. She also continued her education in the darker side of the empire, learned which customs officials could be bribed and which were genuinely honest, understood how to move money through channels that left no trace, developed contacts in industries that operated in legal gray areas, and knew when to push boundaries versus when to maintain plausible deniability. Elena's training evolved from basic survival to advanced strategic thinking. Dr. Chen taught her game theory applied to corporate warfare. James ensured she could actually defend herself if threats escalated beyond words. 6 months after the wedding, Myra realized she couldn't remember the last time someone had called her naive or underestimated her competence. The transformation was complete. Victor noticed it too. She caught him watching her sometimes with an expression that mixed satisfaction and something deeper. Like he'd created something he couldn't fully control and was deciding whether that thrilled or terrified him. "What?" she asked one evening, catching him staring. "You've changed completely. I'm not sure I recognize the girl from that first night anymore." "Good. She was weak. She was hopeful. There's a difference." Myra set down the contract she'd been reviewing. "Do you regret it? Turning me into this?" "No, but I wonder sometimes if I should, if I made you too much like me and not enough like what you could have been. I could have been a waitress taking night classes and believing in fairy tales. Instead, I'm your partner, running million-dollar projects and facing down threats without flinching. I'll take this version. Even knowing what it cost you? Even knowing. I made this choice every step of the way. You offered tools and opportunity. I decided how to use them." Victor crossed to where she sat, pulled her to her feet. "I need to tell you something." The seriousness in his tone made her stomach clench. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. Something's different." He seemed to be struggling for words, which was unusual. "I didn't think I was capable of this, of feeling anything beyond calculation and control. But you've proven me wrong. Victor, I love you." The words came out rough, like they'd been dragged from somewhere deep. "Not because you're useful or because you make good strategic sense. Because you challenge me. Make me question whether ruthlessness is always the answer. Make this empire feel like something worth preserving instead of just expanding." Myra's breath caught. "You love me." "Apparently, against all logic and self-preservation instinct, yes." She pulled him into a kiss that answered better than words could. When they separated, both breathless, she smiled. "I love you too. Have for a while, actually. Just wasn't sure if saying it would break whatever this is." "It won't break. We're too stubborn for that." That night felt like a new beginning layered over the foundation they'd built. They made love without the shadow of transaction or strategy, just two people who'd chosen each other repeatedly until choice became something deeper. Afterward, lying in the darkness, Victor's hand found her stomach, rested there with unexpected tenderness. "I've been thinking," he said quietly. "Dangerous habit. We should talk about the future, long-term planning beyond quarterly projections." "What kind of future?" "The kind where this empire outlasts us, where we build something sustainable instead of just profitable." He paused. "I want children, heirs who inherit something worth maintaining." The statement should have shocked her. Instead, it felt inevitable, the natural evolution of partnership into family. "With me?" she asked. "Who else would I trust to raise children in this world? You understand it. The dangers, the opportunities, the balance between ruthlessness and humanity." Myra thought about it seriously, about bringing children into a life built on moral ambiguity and strategic violence, about whether she could protect them while teaching them to be strong enough to survive. "Not yet," she said finally. "Give me another year to consolidate what we've built, to establish myself fully. Then we can talk about expanding the family." "Fair enough. A year." He pulled her closer. "But we should start planning now. Education, security, how to shield them from the worst while preparing them for the reality." "You're actually serious about this?" "Completely. I've spent years building an empire with no one to leave it to. You changed that calculation." They spent the next hour discussing possibilities that felt both surreal and perfectly logical. Names they liked, how to balance protection with independence, whether to have one child or multiple. The conversation was interrupted by practical concerns and derailed by laughter, and eventually abandoned in favor of sleep. But the seed had been planted. The future stretched beyond quarterly profits and territorial expansion into something more human and permanent. 3 weeks later, Myra stood in the bathroom of their penthouse staring at a pregnancy test that hadn't been part of the plan. 2 lines, unmistakable. "We said a year," she told her reflection. Her reflection didn't answer, just showed her a woman who looked simultaneously terrified and oddly pleased. Victor found her still standing there 20 minutes later, saw the test on the counter. His expression went through several rapid shifts before settling on something that might have been joy if he knew how to express it properly. "We said a year," Myra repeated out loud. "Plans change." He moved closer, hand settling on her still flat stomach with reverent certainty. Are you?" "Apparently." "How do you feel about it?" Myra searched her emotions honestly. Fear, yes. Uncertainty about bringing a child into their complicated world. But underneath that, something warm and surprisingly certain. "I feel like we just made this real in a way that can't be undone. No more pretending this is temporary or strategic. We're building a family. Is that what you want?" "Yes." Terrifyingly, impossibly, yes. Victor kissed her with a gentleness that contradicted everything she knew about him. "Then we do this right. Full security protocols, best medical care. And we start transitioning some of your responsibilities so you're not managing major projects while pregnant. I'm not becoming decorative just because I'm carrying your child. I'm not asking you to. I'm asking you to be strategic about which battles you fight personally and which you delegate." His hand remained on her stomach. "This changes everything. You understand that?" "I understand that we're about to become parents in the middle of running an empire built on morally questionable business practices." "Yes, I understand it's complicated." "Are you ready for complicated?" "I married you, didn't I? I've been ready for complicated since the night I walked into your office in a red dress looking for revenge." He laughed, the sound rare enough to be precious. "Fair point, though I don't think either of us anticipated this specific complication." "No, but we'll handle it. We handle everything else." The pregnancy progressed with the same intensity that characterized everything in their lives. Myra continued working, though Victor insisted on additional security, and Dr. Chen helped her restructure projects to minimize stress. Elena became unexpectedly protective, treating Myra like fragile china despite protests. "You're carrying the heir to Serrano Industries," Elena explained. "That makes you a target. Let us be paranoid." "I was already a target. This doesn't change that. It changes the stakes for everyone." 5 months in, Myra attended a board meeting for Harbor Point's Phase 2 expansion. She presented her analysis of market conditions and community needs with the same competence she'd developed over the past year. 8 months pregnant and absolutely refusing to let it slow her down. Afterward, one of the board members, an older man who'd initially opposed her involvement, approached with something like respect. "Mrs. Serrano, I owe you an apology." "For what?" "For assuming you were window dressing. You've proven yourself a genuine asset to this organization. Your work on Harbor Point has been exceptional." "Thank you, though I should mention I had excellent guidance." "Perhaps, but guidance only works if the student is capable. You clearly are." He hesitated. "Your child is fortunate. They'll have a strong mother." The comment stayed with her through the rest of the day. She was building something that would outlast her. Not just buildings and business deals, but a legacy that the child she carried would inherit. That evening, she and Victor stood in what would become the nursery, a room they'd been slowly preparing with the same attention to detail they applied to business acquisitions. "What kind of parent do you think you'll be?" Myra asked. Victor considered this question seriously. "Demanding, but fair. I want our children strong enough to inherit what we've built without being destroyed by it. That's a narrow line to walk. So is everything worth doing?" His hand found hers. "What about you?" "I want them to have choices I didn't, to know they're loved unconditionally while also understanding that power requires responsibility." She paused. "And I want them to know their mother wasn't always like this, that she chose to become dangerous because being safe meant being powerless." "You'll tell them about Adrian, about how we actually met?" "When they're old enough to understand." "Yes. They should know that love can look like a lot of things, and sometimes it starts with spite and transforms into something real." Victor pulled her close, careful of her rounded stomach. "I never thought I'd have this. Family. Someone who understands this world and chooses to stay anyway. A child who'll carry forward what we're building." "Are you happy?" Myra asked. "Truly. I'm satisfied, content. Whether that's happiness or just the absence of constant striving, I'm not sure. But it's more than I expected to feel." "I'll take it." The baby arrived 3 weeks early on a Tuesday morning while Myra was reviewing contracts. Her water broke mid-sentence, and Victor transformed from ruthless businessman to panicked husband in approximately 3 seconds. We need to go. Now. Where's the bag? Did we pack the bag? Elena! Elena! Victor, breathe. We have time. First babies take hours. Or they don't. We're going. Now. The birth was everything Myra expected and nothing she'd prepared for. Painful, exhausting, terrifying, and ultimately transformative in ways that had nothing to do with business strategy or power dynamics. When the doctor placed their daughter in her arms, tiny, perfect, with Victor's dark hair and eyes that would probably shift color, Myra felt something fundamental shift in her understanding of the world. She's perfect, Victor said, voice rough with emotion she'd never heard before. She's ours. Myra couldn't stop staring at the baby. And we're going to teach her to be dangerous and kind at the same time. Is that possible? We'll make it possible. Just like we made everything else work. They named her Sophia, after Victor's grandmother, who'd apparently been as ruthless as she was compassionate. The name felt like a promise and a legacy combined. The first weeks were chaos. Myra operated on minimal sleep and overwhelming love, learning to balance motherhood with the empire she'd helped build. Victor surprised her by being hands-on, changing diapers, and handling midnight feedings with the same focused intensity he applied to hostile takeovers. You're good at this, Myra observed one night, watching him soothe Sophia back to sleep. I'm determined at this. There's a difference. No, you're good at it. She trusts you. She doesn't know any better yet. Wait until she's old enough to recognize I have no idea what I'm doing. None of us do. We're all just figuring it out. 6 months after Sophia's birth, Myra returned to work part-time. Harbor Point's Phase 2 was ahead of schedule and under budget. The medical research facility had produced its first patent. 3 additional development projects were moving forward with her oversight. She'd also started a foundation, separate from Victor's business interests but funded by their success, that provided support for families dealing with medical debt. The irony of it wasn't lost on her. The money that had manipulated her into Adrian's scheme was now helping people in similar situations. You're building something good, Elena observed during a foundation board meeting. I'm building something that makes the rest of what we do feel less morally compromised, Myra corrected. Same thing, different words. Maybe it was. Myra was learning that moral clarity was less important than actual impact. They made money through ethically questionable channels and used some of it to help people. The contradiction didn't cancel out. It just existed, like everything else in their complicated world. On their first anniversary, Victor took her back to the restaurant where they'd had their first public appearance as a couple. The same table, the same sommelier, but everything else transformed. A year ago, you were terrified, Victor observed. A year ago, I was performing, pretending I belonged. And now? Now I know I belong, not because I pretend, but because I've earned it. She looked at him across the table. We've built something real, Victor. It's messy and complicated and probably morally questionable by conventional standards, but it's ours. No regrets? About marrying you? About becoming part of this world? About choosing power over safety? She smiled. Not one. You? My only regret is not finding you sooner. Think of how much more efficiently we could have operated. We found each other when we needed to. That's enough. He raised his glass. To us. To the empire we're building. To Sophia and whatever comes next. Myra touched her glass to his. To becoming dangerous together and making it look like love. It is love, just not the kind they write songs about. Better. It's the kind that survives.
one more shade.
2 years later, Myra stood at the opening ceremony for the Harbor Point development's final phase. The community center was named after Martinez, the worker who died in Chen's attack. The medical clinic offered free services to underserved populations. The commercial spaces housed locally owned businesses alongside corporate tenants. It was exactly what she'd envisioned when she first took on the project. Proof that power could build something worthwhile instead of just consuming and destroying. Victor stood beside her with Sophia in his arms, now a toddler who'd inherited her mother's determination and her father's intensity. The cameras captured them as a family, powerful, successful, The kind of dynasty that inspired both admiration and envy. How does it feel? Victor asked as they cut the ribbon. Like I finally understand what you meant. About building something that outlasts us. This is your legacy. Sophia's inheritance, something good built from everything we are. Myra looked at the development, at their daughter, at the man who'd given her weapons instead of rescue and trusted her to use them wisely. I thought I was broken that night, when I heard Adrian's betrayal, like something fundamental had shattered that couldn't be repaired. What do you think now? That I wasn't broken. I was breaking free, from illusions about how the world works, from believing safety was the same as strength. She met his eyes. You didn't break me. You helped me break through to who I actually was underneath all the conditioning to be soft and grateful and small. And who are you? Myra Serrano, your wife, your partner, Sophia's mother. Someone powerful enough to build empires and ruthless enough to defend them. Someone who chose to be dangerous because being safe meant being powerless. That's who you've always been. I just gave you permission to acknowledge it. No, you gave me tools and opportunity and enough trust to become it. There's a difference. Sophia chose that moment to demand attention, reaching for the ribbon with determined hands. They laughed and let her help cut it, creating a photo opportunity that would appear in tomorrow's papers under headlines about family dynasties and community investment. Later, back at the penthouse after Sophia was asleep, Victor and Myra stood at the windows overlooking the city they'd claimed as their kingdom. I've been thinking about expansion, Victor said. International markets, Asia, Europe, South America. Ambitious. We're running out of territory here. Time to grow. We have Sophia to consider now. Expanding internationally means more time away, more risks. It also means more opportunity. A bigger empire for her to inherit. And you'd be leading the expansion. Myra turned to look at him. Me? You've proven yourself more than capable. Harbor Point was just the beginning. I want to see what you can build when you're not limited by my shadow. I'm not ready to operate completely independently. You're more ready than you think, and I'll still be here. Partner, not supervisor. He pulled her close. What do you say? Ready to conquer new territory? Myra thought about the girl in the red dress, about 6 months of believing in fairy tales that never existed, about the choice to be dangerous instead of safe. Yes, she said, let's build something bigger. Because that's what they did. Built empires from spite and strategy, and something that looked enough like love to be real. Raised a daughter who would inherit not just wealth, but the knowledge that power required responsibility and strength came from choosing to be dangerous when the world demanded softness. The red dress still hung in Myra's closet. She'd kept it as a reminder of who she'd been and how far she'd traveled. Sometimes she took it out and remembered the girl who'd believed in romance and gratitude and the idea that being good would protect her. That girl was gone. In her place stood someone harder, sharper, capable of things that would have horrified her younger self. But she'd chosen this transformation, every step of the way, chosen power over safety, strategy over innocence, partnership over protection. And standing in the penthouse that represented everything she'd become, with her daughter asleep down the hall and her husband planning their next conquest, Myra Vale Serrano understood that she'd never been broken. She'd been breaking free, and she'd finally learned to fly.